township, like Scio, the Township Board retains most administrative authority. In contrast, the Charter Township Act grants the Charter Township Supervisor more authority over the day-to-day operations of the township, but Scio is not a charter township. Why is this being proposed? Why is this necessary? And why the push to ram this through a vote tonight when residents were expecting a discussion based on the resolution from the last trustee meeting on April 27th? His hasty and rash push for more power is simply unacceptable at this time, and I've seen nothing in the supervisor's proposal that convinces me that the township manager administrator is necessary. Let's define more carefully the staff positions we really need for the future. We should slow this process down and allow time for a full and complete review of these proposals by township residents, the voters who elected you and who deserve to have their voices heard. And I have confidence that this board, after hearing from residents and working together, will be able to find the best path forward. Just not tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Harvey. Next up is Roy Townsend, followed by Shelly. Roy?
Yeah, thank you. I'd like to respond. And I'd like first thank you all for running. Obviously, these are challenging times, so I appreciate you guys, stepping up and serving Scio Township. A little history. Actually, I worked at the Washington County Road Commission for over 31 years. And actually, one of my first projects was a paving of Wagner Road back in 1988. And I worked with the township manager at that time. I've worked with numerous township supervisors and township managers over the 31 years I've worked at the Road Commission. I've since retired. Now I work with County Parks on the Border Trail. Also worked with the township on all the phases of Jackson Boulevard, segments of Zeeb Road, segments of Baker Road. Done a lot of great work in Scio Township. I've lived in Scio Township for the last 20 years, and it's a great place to live. I've been very involved in making trails happen. Been, like I said, involved with the county, been involved with the township, and just some facts on why I feel like you need a full-time manager. You probably need a full-time supervisor. I've worked with all 20 townships. I've worked with the large townships like Pittsfield and Ypsilanti townships. They have double, triple the staff that Scio does. Scio has a very small staff, which I appreciate as a township taxpayer, but also there's consequences by having a too small a staff, because sometimes funding opportunities slip through the cracks. I'm well aware of that. If you don't have enough staff, certain federal funds, state funds, other funds, well, you just don't have time to get after them. And back in the 80s, there weren't a lot of these millages, weren't a lot of funding things. And I just wrote down a few things in the last 10 or 20 years that have changed in Scio Township. For one, there's a transit millage. That's something that takes managing. Open space millage. You have a Scio DDA. You have a roads SAD that takes time. You have a fire millage. You also have to negotiate with the county, the sheriff agreement. You also have the Gelman cleanup and the court order. I mean, that's a huge thing that's been going on for 30 or 40 years, and I'm not sure someday we'll get closer to resolving that. You have the economic growth in Scio Township, which is one, I think my numbers look at, I think it's the third largest tax base in Washington County. Ann Arbor's one, I think Pittsfield 2, Scio's 3, I believe. You've since passed Ypsilanti Township. You have also local special assessment districts that take monitoring, if it's for road projects or other type of projects. You have federal CBD grants that take managing. So at the end of the day, there's a huge amount of activities that a person, you need a manager. I work with Bryce. I work with Bryce Kelly. I worked with others, and I'm just familiar with working at townships as large as Scio. You need full-time staff to manage this. Your tax, the revenue you bring in is quite large, and just someone to manage it efficiently only makes sense in my mind. So thank you for your time. Thank you for your service.
Thank you, Roy. Shelly is next, followed by Stephen Feinberg. Shelly?
Yeah, I'm Shelly Shanfield. I'm a 31-year resident of Scio Township. I live at 5201 Birkdale Drive. And there's a lot to absorb in the materials that you made available for public review regarding the shared governance versus the township administrator models. And while there are some similarities in the two structures, as was pointed out in the administrative models overview document, there's at least one glaring and important difference that I saw in the materials. that I was able to review. And the first is that the shared governance model has a job description for the administrative services manager, which is specific and detailed with regard to duties, qualifications, experience, and salary, and is attorney approved. The township administrator job description is vague in outlining duties. It does not list qualifications or experience requirements and makes no mention of salary. I'm agnostic on which model is best. I just am thinking that probably some combination of the two of them, some compromise could be reached that would be effective for the township. But neither one of them really addresses directly the problems noted with regard to past serious issues in the township, such as the deficits in the utilities and water department and the condition of the fire department facilities. However, the township administrator model seems to replicate the structure that got the township into trouble in the first place. So keeping this in mind with considering I think it's agenda item J4, that this resolution assigning certain supervisory and human resources functions to the supervisor, clerk, and treasurer is found. And this resolution makes significant changes in township governance, which would last until at least November of 2024. And it assigns duties to a township administrator. And given the resolution's sweeping nature and the amorphous quality of the township administrator job description as stated or as included in this packet, it seems foolhardy to even advance this resolution. It should be discussed, but it should not be voted on. And again, there's a lot for an observer to absorb, but I am concerned with the vague description of the duties and the lack of any specific salary, qualifications, and experience in the township administrator model as proposed. Thanks for your time.
Thank you, Shelly. Next up is Stephen Feinberg, followed by Kerry Klein. Stephen?
Hi, Jessica. Steve Feinberg, 3498 Timberwood Lane. I've been a member of Scio Township for almost 31 years. One of my neighbors, Peter Davis, just sent you a letter. I would like that letter read so that it's incorporated into the minutes. Can you please do that for me?
We're not in the practice of reading in documents. It's
important. It's important. I have the right to incorporate what I want at this time. It's a comment from the public.
Well,
Sorry.
If you want to read the letter, that you can use your 3 minutes to do that.
Okay, this is from Peter Davis, one of my neighbors. I live in Scio Township from 73 to 75 and moved back in 2012. My home is on Honey Creek, which runs through the middle of my property. In between those two time periods, I lived in Ann Arbor Charter Township, where I served on the Township Board of Trustees. Based on that experience, as well as more than 50 years as a trial lawyer, I wish to share my observations on the manner in which our newly elected supervisor is attempting to increase his power beyond that intended by the statutory scheme for township governances and far removed from his checkered work history, which he has outlined on his LinkedIn page. Recently, my attention was drawn to a flurry of job descriptions and organizational charts coming out of the township, which has been functioning as the Scio Township Administration Committee, a creature not described in any Michigan statute. That entity of questionable legality meets at odd times on odd days, such that members of the public who are at work elsewhere are unable to attend critically important meetings where subjects are contested in heated discussions. A township is the most basic form of local government. In the 8 years I've served as Ann Arbor Township trustee, I never saw an organizational chart or job description for the supervisor, clerk, treasurer, or trustees. The Michigan Constitution of 63 states, in each organization of township, there shall be elected for terms of 4 years as prescribed by the law a supervisor, a clerk, a treasurer, and not to exceed 4 trustees, whose legislative and administrative powers and duties shall be provided by law. Proceeding from the constitutional authority, we took the Michigan statutory law for guidance as to the duties of each position. The supervisor moderates meetings of Board of Trustees, supervisors as the township's legal agent, develops the township's budget, appoints some commission members, and serves as the township's board of review and in the chief assessing officer for the township, if he or she is certified. Will Hathaway is not certified and may call special meetings of the Board of Trustees and may appoint a deputy supervisor. No statute gives the supervisor the authority to appoint a township manager or township administrator. It is only the Board of Trustees which may employ a township manager and other employee as necessary. Based upon my experience and my review of the statutes, there is no doubt that the most important township office is that of the township clerk. The supervisor has the fewest duties, and in every township I have seen, the supervisor's job is half-time. Our previous supervisor worked half-time, and the board appointed a full-time manager. When the manager fell ill and had to resign, the supervisor began working a full-time job. This is not the situation here. Mr. Hathaway does not have the duties or the experience to work as a full-time supervisor of Scio Township. I have seen his self-drafted job descriptions and proposed resolutions, which have a single purpose, namely to increase his powers as supervisor of making it a full-time job, doubling his salary. Mr. Hathaway claims to arrogate for himself the statutory duties belonging to others. He wants to nominate all individuals who will serve on township boards, commissions, and committees, as well as any outside agencies comprised of multiple government entities.
Mr. Feinberg, your time is up.
You're trying to take over this place, buddy. And if you don't watch out, you're going to be recalled by.
Steve, your time is up. I've muted you. Thank you. Next up is Kerry Letke, followed by Wendy Munoz Klein. Kerry?
Good evening. Can you hear me okay?
Yes. Hi.
Kerry Letke, 2751 Whispering Woods Drive. I just want to start, and I'm going to only be brief because I know it's a long meeting and they always seem to be. You were voted in with expectations and we took your word. We were hoping for better governance from what we'd seen before, especially from our previous manager. We took your word and this seems to have been a bait and switch. We come here having to spend time during work days and evenings to have to follow what's going on rather than to just trust your judgment and standards. It's exhausting. Please hold your positions to a higher regard out of respect for yourselves and your constituents. Are you even really listening to the people that take the time out of their lives for you to be paid and be voted in to serve us? I'll spend the rest of my 30 seconds finishing what Peter wrote. He believes he wants the moderator of the township meetings and serve as in all the advisory commissions to the township board and an executive officer voting member of the Downtown Developmental Authority and control over the budget and wants to act as chief legislator. Quote his words. When he's a member of the township's administrative arm per the Michigan Constitution and not a member of a legislative body, which is the Board of Trustees. It seems that Mr. Hathaway is attempting to anoint himself as the emperor of the township to justify a full-time job. The resolutions that he has prepared are astonishing in their arrogance and describe a system of government. Mr. Hathaway, who formerly chaired the Planning Commission, has set one of his chief goals, the creation of a walking path through Honey Creek. Needless to say, there's no public use for easements, construction of pathways. I'm summarizing this part at this point. It's just really frustrating because it doesn't seem for you guys to be governing us the way that we have anticipated, expected, and deserve. Thank you for listening to me. Good evening.
Thank you, Kerry. Next up is Wendy Munoz Klein, followed by Melanie. Wendy?
Hi, I am at 4950 John Holmes Road. My grandparents were the original owners of the property since 1960, and I've been here since they passed away. I am not a fan of this new proposal at all. It has not worked and served well for Scio Township. And from what I'm seeing, it doesn't look like it's going to do any better. I would like to stick with shared roles where everybody knows what everybody is doing. I'm tired of last minute changes. And oh, by the way, this is happening and we're going to do it while you're at work, so you can't keep an eye on us. That's not fair. That's not what we're voting for. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Wendy. Next up, we have Melanie, followed by Jan Culbertson. Melanie?
What is the master plan, or what, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. What does the master plan say about this area? Because I've heard threats of eminent domain, which does not belong in this space. That's ridiculous. I mean, you may propose a plan, but eminent domain, like that does not belong here. So if you're threatening neighbors for your planned projects when you already have hundreds of thousands of dollars to create a pathway project, I just think it's weak. It doesn't belong. And I will accept your comments. Thank you.
Thank you, Melanie. Jan Culbertson.
Muted.
Jan? Oh, I'm sorry. Jan, would you like to speak?
Yes, I would. Thank you very much.
Excuse me, sorry.
Getting the unmuted piece together. Anyway, I'm Jan Culbertson, and I live at 2948 Park Ridge in Scio. I've lived here for 31 years, and I'm currently chair of the Planning Commission. First of all, I want to thank everyone for all that you're doing, and I know everyone's intentions are to serve Scio Township in the best way possible. With that, I'd like to say I want to thank Roy Townsend especially for your historical perspective, and also note that the idea of a township manager is a very traditional and an administrative structure that's common across many townships in Michigan. I don't think that there is, and one of the things I want to say that there's been some criticisms about some of the past managers, and I think that has to do a lot with management style as opposed to necessarily the structure. And I think we've got what I really relish about this township is we've got creative people engaged. I mean, from the clerk and the treasurer and the trustees, the planning commission, we have good people that are very creative. And I feel like we need a continuity of management that spans across the elected officials. Mm-hmm. And also human resources is a major responsibility. It's a very technical field right now, and we need somebody who has the depth of that experience. So I think looking at the management models, I think first is it's really about the people, and it's about continuity, and it's about experience. And so I would challenge all of you to really think about those things. And I really don't want to encourage people to think about this as a power structure, a power grab. I think everybody is trying to figure out what is best for the township. And I want to say it's about the qualities of people. And I want to think that the trustees and all of the staff would be relationship builders. They would be team players. They would be emotionally mature. They would be approachable, critical thinkers, prepared, and they would have a financial acumen. And those are qualities that we all need. And I would encourage you all to think about that as you're looking at the structures and the way that you're working together and so forth. And I just want to say we have a great planning commission, and I really want to thank Will for doing the research on those on the people that make up the Planning Commission. And thank you for the administrative support that we've had. And I really hope that all of you, maybe, when this is all over, you can do a ropes course when we can meet in person again, because everyone needs to support everyone in this township. Thank you.
Thanks, Jan. Next up is Elaine Brock. Elaine?
Hi, everybody. So
Hi.
I did actually try to slog through this 100 and whatever pages of this stuff, and it's nuts. I don't see how a normal person who's not every day associated with this stuff can get through all of that. But there were a couple of things that I wrote in my letter and I think that I could point out. One was that clearly the April 27th agenda item said no vote tonight, and I can't believe that we're actually discussing that as a possibility. That we talk about bait and switch. That is a bait and switch, and that's unfair to the public. So I think that was not appropriate. I get what you're trying to do, and that retaining authority to do whatever you need to do, but I don't see a need to do this right now. And considering the April 27th vote, I think that it's inappropriate to consider that you would take a vote tonight on either of these models. Considering too that the models themselves, there is a budget memo in here in this packet. It actually appears in there 3 times that I counted from Sandy Egler. And it raises to me some very serious questions about the budget. Not only the contributions from the fire department and others, but the longevity and the sustainability of going forward with either of these models at this point without answering those budget questions. I mean, how can you do that to the township people without being serious enough to say that we have the funds and we can support either of these models the way that they're actually presented? So, and then I'm pretty concerned about some of the stuff in the township administrator model that talks about joint responsibility for various things. I highlighted them a couple of them in my memo, but joint reporting and joint responsibility is just chaos. That's an invitation to never get anything done. I think that's inappropriate. If you're going to have responsibility, then state the responsibilities clearly, state the roles clearly, state the responsibilities for reporting clearly, and do that in a way which is consistent with the power that you have as a board. And if you don't have delegatory authority that's actually in the statute or an ordinance or regulation somewhere, then you shouldn't be doing this, delegating responsibility that would otherwise be retained by the board. I think that it's important to note that if we're going to grow as a township, we need people who have experience. So recruiting people who actually, not because they happen to be elected as a supervisor and feel like the role has grown into a full-time role. I'm not disputing or arguing with that. But there needs to be experienced people who fill the positions that are actually needed. I mentioned in my previous comments at a previous meeting about looking at gaps and trying to fill the gaps with appropriate experienced people. I also think that the role of the various citizen advisory committees needs to be very clearly laid out in either of these models. And if we have problems trying to figure out how to do this, there is expert help out there, like the MSU Extension Service, who deals extensively with township governance. We could ask them for help. I just think we are not ready to do this right now, even though I think that there is some need to do something. Neither of these models right now is ready for a vote.
Thank you, Elaine. Any other hands? Please raise your Zoom hand if you're interested in speaking at this point. Jillian Carey, followed by Jonathan Greenberg. Jillian? Hi.
30 seconds.
Thank you, Jillian. Next up is Jonathan Greenberg, followed by Peter Davis. Jonathan?
Yeah, I'll keep it short. Want to echo some of the comments heard earlier that want to really sum up my perspective here is this is important stuff. And I agree, Will, we need to do things differently here. I think the entire board agrees on that. What I don't think people agree on is the need to move quickly, the need to make a drastic change quickly that benefits you and your colleagues. I think the township is right to ask you to step back, don't make any rash decisions, get the help you can from the resources that are available to us. And I'm sorry if I'm interrupting someone.
No, I don't know what that was. Keep going.
Okay. Anyhow, well, that's primarily it. That there's no reason to rush into this. We have time. We can do this right. This is feeling more and more like a you grab some. I'm sorry.
Grab some?
I think someone's unmuted.
Yeah, I do feel like someone's unmuted.
Yeah, I don't see anybody unmuted. Forgive me. I was looking.
I am unmuted.
Melanie is.
Melanie.
Yes, thank you. Melanie Bolt.
Yeah.
3751 Yes, hello, can you hear me?
Hi, Melanie. I can hear you.
Hi.
Hold on. It's not quite your turn. My apologies.
That's fine.
Okay.
That's fine.
I'll call on you just as soon as Jonathan's done.
Thank you.
Hey, thanks, Melanie. I appreciate it. This whole Zoom thing's difficult for everyone. I get it. I guess my point is we don't have to move on this right now. Let's take it a little bit slower. And I also officially want to point out that many, many people said duty tonight.
Great. Thank you very much, Jonathan. Let's go to Peter Davis, followed by Melanie. Peter?
Wait, before we go forward, I think Melanie has already spoken. I have her name on my list as someone
Oh, I do have a Melanie who spoke just before Jan. Okay. Melanie, I'm sorry, there's just one opportunity to speak at this juncture, so I'm going to move on to Peter Davis. Peter?
Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes.
I live at 3225 North Wagner on Honey Creek. I want to begin by stating that I agree with Trustee Jerome's comment that the preliminary matters that took up half an hour of your time should have been discussed earlier in a different session, a different setting. It looked like amateur hour to the ordinary resident of the township, and it really should have been done some other time. And I also think that the two competing models are so important that they should be the subject of one meeting and with nothing else on the agenda. I don't know how you can possibly debate these two competing models and vote on them in a session where you have 195 pages in your packet, which is so taxing that there's no way in the world that anybody can get through it, much less someone who is not sophisticated in township government or legal matters. I think that it's just too important. You have my memo, and one of the reasons I submitted the memo is because I knew that I couldn't read it in 3 minutes. No one could read it in 3 minutes unless you're given the complications for a pharmaceutical on a television ad. So I'm glad that 2 or 3 of you, of the citizens, did try to read it, so I don't have to. But I want to begin by talking about Honey Creek because it's very important. Honey Creek is not Mill Creek. I know there's a pathway in Mill Creek. Mill Creek is totally different, different geography, different landscape, different ownership on both sides than Honey Creek. Honey Creek runs through residential areas for the most part, and those are all private lots. There's no public easement that's been granted by any of those public lots that I know of for the use of a pathway in Honey Creek. It's been known throughout this country in every state, and it was decided by the Michigan Supreme Court more than 150 years ago that a navigable stream is a stream which you can float a log down. Honey Creek will not ever take a log. I lived in Honey Creek since 1973. Built a house there in 1973. I never saw a log come down that creek. One day after I had lived there for a few years, I saw a couple of kids try to kayak up the creek. They couldn't do it. They got bogged down, had to take the kayak out and walk to the road. It is not a navigable stream under Michigan law. And therefore, if it's not a navigable stream, a pathway cannot be created by eminent domain or by easements. To attempt to do so would invite a lawsuit that would be a multi-million-dollar lawsuit by the time it was finished. It would be foolhardy for the township to try to do that. So that's really a side issue here. What I'm concerned about, 30 all right. What I'm concerned about here is the way the township is going to be governed under the models advocated for by your supervisor. I think the consolidation of power in the office of the supervisor is a dire mistake. It's going to result in more jobs. And I know that the supervisor stated that in the packet that compensation should be increased to reflect the reality in both models. And he states that the reality is that the position of supervisor is not part-time. The current supervisor is consistently working 60 plus hours per week on township business. That doesn't mean that a part-time person with experience couldn't do it.
Thank
Position
you,
is the part.
Thank you, Peter. Your time is up.
All right.
Thank you, Peter. Does anybody else want to speak? Please raise your Zoom hand. I see no other public.
Thank you. Let's move on to reports. The first item is from the fire chief. Report from the fire chief.
Great. Bring him in. There he is.
Good
Playing a
evening,
video
Board.
game.
Everyone hear me okay?
Yep.
I apologize for the attire. When I got home from work, my ER needed my attention, so I decided I should not mow the lawn in uniform. So to begin with, on your first page there, we have total number of incidents for the month, 93 calls. 90 of those within the community, 3 outside, and the breakdown below. We requested mutual aid for 1 incident and again left the community 3 times. Page 2, your significant incidents. One that got a little bit of attention. We had a structure fire that occurred in the Sherwin-Williams store on Jackson Road. That building is a sprinkled building, so the fire suppression system did activate and kept the fire contained. There was pretty significant damage, however, due to the smoke and the water that came from that. Due to the fact that it's a strip mall and there's damage to the neighbor's property as well as the potential damage to the building, there's a lot of insurance folks involved. We did our cause and origin. We believe an electrical malfunction caused the fire, but we're not making an official determination until everybody else is through and has made theirs as well. We typically investigate 15 to 20 fires a year. The folks that they have in there do 15 to 20 fires a month. So their level of expertise is much beyond ours. I did work with a couple of them while they were out, and our origin seems to be pretty consistent, but we're going to wait for their final determination. That's the one fire we investigated this month. Total response time, 9 minutes and 11 seconds for the month. Our arrival time from alarm time, 6 minutes and 16 seconds. And percentage of calls that we make it to the scene in under 6 minutes is just over 52. Response comparison, our northeast corner of the township, 72 calls. This is year to date. I apologize. A total April response comparison, 93 versus 72 for the last 2 years. I think last year we were down pretty significantly due to COVID. We saw that throughout the county. This year we seem to be bouncing back, and our chart across the bottom, we're up about 28% calls year to date. This should put us ballpark 1,100 to 1,150 calls per year, provided nothing else changes significantly and the pattern continues. Responses per zone. This is year to date for 2021. Our northeast section of the community, 75 calls, southeast, 152, and our west and southwest, 166 calls. And hopefully that's short and sweet for you, and I'd be happy to answer any questions the board may have for me.
I don't see any questions. Thank you very much, Andy.
Thank you, board.
Next up is the report on Gelman. Trustee Knoll.
Yes, as you all are aware, we had the court hearing on May 3rd, and 3 hours into the court hearing, the judge ordered implementation of the fourth amended consent judgment. The order did not include the settlement agreement that Gelman had proposed, nor did it include the stipulated order that had been part of the proposal package. Under the terms of this, the interveners remain as interveners, and this process will not impact the EPA process. The judge has ordered quarterly conferences starting September 1st, and he also ordered that the work is to start immediately, the work being the new cleanup activities that Gelman had agreed to in the fourth amended CJ. There will most likely be an appeal. Gelman has already said they're planning on appealing. The hearing transcript has just arrived, so they've just gotten the transcript. We have the transcript. And so we're waiting to see what happens with that. Today, we heard from the EPA, and the EPA and Eagle are coordinating their next steps. Updates on this process will be posted on the EPA Gelman website, and they have recently put up some new material. We were informed today that Diane Russell has been assigned as the Community Involvement Coordinator for the Gelman site. She will be our point of contact and our source of information as the next steps evolve. That's it.
Thank you. I guess Supervisor is next. I want to highlight work that I've been doing with Trustee Courteau on recycling. I understand that from Trustee Courteau that there is another proposal coming from Recycle Ann Arbor. Hopefully we're getting close to an agreement that will allow us to, the township to reopen the monthly drop-off program. The other thing that we've been doing in terms of recycling is working with the county. There's a grant that the county received to do kind of an array of different activities to promote improvements to residential recycling. And so they're going to be, part of this is going to be something that's called an audit program. And there'll be more information coming out about this, but I wanted to use this opportunity to give people a heads up that this is coming. So there will be more explanation prior to the start of this, but eventually, later this summer, you may see someone in a fluorescent vest peeking into your recycling bin and evaluating how you're doing. What they're doing is, at first is just to gather data, but then eventually they're going to sort of let people know if there's something deficient with the recycling in your recycling bin. And it's meant to be an educational program to improve how people recycle. We're working with the county to try and minimize any sort of negative reaction, from people who haven't gotten the word about what this is all about. The next item on the reports is the Downtown Development Authority. The Downtown Development Authority Board met yesterday. It meets every 2 months. Some of the highlights, one of the items on the agenda was the Washtenaw County Road Commission Local Road Maintenance Program. That item I'll speak to more when that comes up later on our agenda. There was a proposal from possible development on Jackson Road to offer a park to the township as part of their development proposal. The DDA board was not enthusiastic about a park at that location. That communication will go back to the Planning Commission, where that matter is sort of still pending. Other item was the brownfield grant that we talked about at prior meetings. The DDA board was very enthusiastic about that and looks forward hopefully to that grant being approved and the DDA playing a role in administering that grant as a fiscal agent. We talked about the bus shelters that the DDA has purchased for installation along Jackson Boulevard. There is now a plan or an intent anyway to work with Ann Arbor Area Transportation Authority so that they can take responsibility for those bus shelters once they're put in place. And finally, the DDA has begun working on an update of its master plan. So that's a new initiative to sort of get, more recent thought into that plan. The current plan is, I think, dates back about 15 years. That's our report from the DDA board. Next up is the clerk.
Sure, a brief one pager is in there to make sure you have the data on the recent special election, May 4th. Pittsfield Public Safety went down, City of Milan Senior Services was passed. There's a special election called for August 3rd, not here in Scio Township, but Ann Arbor Township, Northfield Township, and Ypsi Township all have millages on the ballot that we should be watching. Next opportunity for a special election here is November 2nd. If the board wants to place any proposal on the November 2nd ballot, it is due not later than August 10th. So it's something that we need to be thinking about now if we want to. Petitions are due by July 27th. Secondly, FOIA was to be on the agenda. This time, only a couple small changes from our attorney. I know Will wanted more time reading it. If any of you have questions, let me know. I hope we can approve it and get ourselves in compliance by next meeting. Compensation Commission. I'll have a proposed ordinance to establish a compensation commission. This is one of the things on our good governance to-do list. A compensation commission is something that most townships do. We never have, we really should. And it is a process by which there is an advisory body that sets recommendations for all elected officials' compensation. So in this case, it would be the 7 of us. The board may accept or deny each of the recommendations. It's a pretty straightforward ordinance, but really encourage us to look at that because it's a much better way to set compensation than setting our own salaries. The next piece I want to say, so both of those FOIA and Compensation Commission coming next time. I do want to talk about rules of order. That is what we lack. Bylaws, rules of order, most boards have that say things such as how are agendas set, when are they posted, how does Alec get his materials 5 days in advance. We have an informal rules committee Will, Kathy and I met a couple of times, and we have models from all over, but what I would propose, given the sort of extraordinary situation leading up to this meeting, is that at the top of the agenda at our next meeting, we deal with 4 rules. I'm happy to work with Kathy, Will, whoever else wants to. These are pretty straightforward. But to deal with who prepares the agenda, who places matters on the agenda, when is that agenda and supportive material due, and when shall they be distributed, and set some hard rules, because it's certainly no one's agenda. It never has been in Scio or any other township. It's always been the 7. And so it's really a matter of making sure we have a process that is inclusive, fair, clear, and with achievable deadlines. So that would be my proposal. Our attorney has been urging us to put rules, because we will not be able to settle debates until we set some rules for ourselves on these matters. The other thing I just wanted to note, and not for next time, but soon, is I would ask for any partners in looking at an ethics ordinance for Scio Township. There have been things going on. You know, I'm concerned about staff and their feeling of being able to speak freely. We had 2 staff people speak freely. One is a staff person and one is a resident at the last board meeting. One of those has had a problem appear with her paycheck due tomorrow. Another one of them has been reprimanded by an officer for doing so. I have been told that I have, lobbied. And so there's a lot swirling around. And so truly, this is the kind of stuff where sunlight is the best disinfectant. And so I really believe that if there's stuff going on, ethical violations by any of the 7 of us or by staff, that we need a simple process. And so I would ask for a partner on that. There's all sorts of models and pretty easy to pull together. But I think that we are at the point where we need a process for that. That's all I have.
Thank you for that report. The treasurer.
I have nothing to say at this time.
Thank you. Planning Commission, Trustee Corto.
Thank you. So the Planning Commission has been working hard to wrap up our review of the draft of the master plan and anticipates having that before the board at our next meeting. And similarly, the Planning Commission approved a proposal for a task force on environmental sustainability that has the goal of developing an environmental sustainability plan for the township and a climate action plan. And that also we hope to have before the board at the next meeting, as long as we can get the process steps clear. And then continuing to work considering staffing and budget as we move through the next few months to consider our workflow efficiency.
Thank you. The next item is also Trustee Corto. That's the Land Preservation Commission.
And the land preservation has not met since the last board meeting, but does continue to have properties come to us to evaluate. We did meet with our county partners to continue working out our working relationship and clarifying their process so that we can coordinate more smoothly with them on agricultural land preservation. And we are continuing to work toward this buy, protect, sell model. That's been a little bit slow, but still under development.
Thank you. The next item is the Transportation Alternatives Planning Committee. Trustee Vogel.
I'll be honest. I just find myself so utterly discouraged by this conversation so far. I'm just trying to kind of pick myself up. What do I know about TAP? Zebra Road Phase 3, the construction got approved. It's on schedule. We're going to hear about Parkland Plaza construction coming up. We're trying to figure out funding for the later stages of SEEB, stage 4 and 5, getting across the river, because we're trying to do lots of good things for these residents, you know? I also want to say that Honey Creek is really a concept. It's likelihood of ever happening. I don't want anyone to feel like that's anything eminent, anything in anybody's back pocket. All these attacks are just so discouraging to hear. And the misrepresentation, the need for ethics, as if we've all done something wrong. I just feel so discouraged right now. So I'm done.
Parks Advisory Board, Trustee Jerome.
I'll be short and sweet. You are correct. We are evaluating a potential donation of a park property along Jackson Avenue, and we'll be weighing in on the prospects or our viewpoint on that. And then simply, I'd like to introduce the fact that we have engaged 2 interns from the SEAS program at the University of Michigan, who are going to be working on a study and taking a look at all the nature and doing a familiarity with all of our parks and coming up with some plans with regards to township assets.
Thank you. The next item is the consent agenda. This is the possible action on the payment of the bills. Would someone like to move the consent agenda, make the model motion?
I'll move.
Moved by Jerome. Support by Courteau. Please call the roll.
Hathaway,
Yes.
Palmer,
Yes.
Flintoff, yes, Corto,
Yes.
Jerome,
Yes.
Noel,
Yes.
Vogel,
Yes.
motion passes.
Thank you. The next item is unfinished business. I-1 is possible action in the Washtenaw County Road Commission 2021 second agreement. And this will look familiar because we considered this at a prior board meeting and tabled it so that we could have more information about what the DDA would do in terms of its sharing of the cost. And I can report that the DDA yesterday approved up to $114,000 towards the cost of the Enterprise Drive repaving. So that will bring down the cost, the remaining cost, with the offset from the matching funds from the Washtenaw County Road Commission, which is how this particular program works. There's matching funds that are available to townships to encourage road maintenance, road repair projects. That brings our remaining cost down to somewhere around $55,000. What I would ask, I think the way that this works is that the township sort of fronts the money and then is reimbursed by the DDA for its share of the cost. I would I've done a little bit of research about where to draw the funds from for the township's portion, and what I would recommend, there's a fund called, it's fund number 402. It's the revolving fund. It was actually established back in 2008, and it includes funds that basically were repaid into the fund according to the terms of the fund from sort of payments that came in for reimbursement of township investment in road improvements. And there's a sort of an understanding that this fund will be used or could be used for projects within the Downtown Development Authority area. So it seemed to me to be an appropriate source from which to draw the funds. This was one of the questions, I think, when this came up before, is where are the funds coming from? And this is the answer that I would propose for the township share of the cost of this particular agreement.
Sandy, is that Sandy's suggestion, or she endorses this?
I asked Sandy, and Sandy actually, together with Christy Aiken, found the original language, the motion that established this fund from 2008, and it matches up nicely with the language at the time. Where the township isn't actually bound by the commitment to do projects in the Downtown Development Authority. They could be anywhere in the township, but that was sort of it was reflected in the minutes that was kind of an intent at the time.
Donna, are you on board with this?
Yes.
Okay.
So if someone would like to move the model motion to approve sort of up to that amount, I'm also working with the road commission to try and see if we can negotiate a better price based on another quote that was received last year for this project. So it's possible that the cost may come in a little lower than what's here, but there's no guarantee. So what I'd like to do is sort of approve up to that amount with the understanding that we might be able to get it less expensively.
Mm-hmm.
Is someone ready to make that motion?
Can I try to make it just for the record?
Sure.
Okay. A motion to approve the second 2021 local roads agreement with Washtenaw County Road Commission in an amount not to exceed $168,450 payable from Fund 402 with the understanding that the DDA will contribute $114,000.
I think the only problem is that I don't know that Fund 402 has that full amount in it. So I don't know if we can pay it out of that fund to start with.
Gotcha. And we need to front this money, right, Will?
We have, I believe that's how this works, that the township fronts its portion of the cost and then we get reimbursed. Eventually by the time we whittle it down to the township share, there will be enough money in Fund 402 to pay for that.
Sandy, do you have any comments? Okay, I don't see any. So we'll just say Fund 402 and 101 is backup if needed.
I'm sorry.
Oh, thank you, Sandy.
I wasn't paying that close of attention. What was the question?
So we're talking about the agreement with the Washtenaw County Road Commission. The understanding is that the township sort of fronts its share of the cost of that agreement, which could be up to $168,450, which is an amount that I understand from you, Sandy, is greater than what is in Fund 402. So we couldn't front the money for that full amount from Fund 402, but by the time we sort of whittle down what the township share is, then Fund 402 would be adequate to cover that amount. It's just that we would have to, I think, probably front the money using funds from other accounts than Fund 402 in order to meet that full amount.
When is this project going to kick off? Because the DDA could cut the check for the 114,000 to the township so that there is ample money in that fund to cover the whole check to the road commission.
Well, if we do it in that order, then it probably would not be an issue. Trustee Vogel.
It does not sound like this is an issue ready for board discussion. It sounds like it needs additional staff work. This, in my mind, is the kind of vetting of items coming to the board that are quite incomplete. We're taking up an amount of time because the work is not done for this item to move forward. We're consulting with staff real time, it seems. We don't seem to have the finance point person on board with this. This doesn't seem ready for board discussion, and we're taking a lot of time.
I apologize for that. The DDA action and the discussion with Sandy was basically between Friday and today, but that's when the DDA was meeting. The problem with putting this off until our next meeting is that we need to have an agreement in place with the Washtenaw County Road Commission by the 22nd. So I would prefer to go with the phrasing that Clerk Flintoff used for the motion, and try and work with the DDA to try and get the funds transferred in a timely fashion so that we make sure that we can cover the cost up front.
So I made a motion.
Is there a second? Is there support?
Or
Support by Palmer. So motion by Flintoff, support by Palmer. Is there any other further discussion?
For public comment?
Public comment, right.
I was just reminding you, Will.
Yeah, thank you. Sorry.
I don't see any Zoom hands.
Okay. Please call the roll.
Hathaway?
Yes.
Palmer?
yes.
Flintoff? Yes. Courteau?
Yes.
Jerome?
Yes.
Noel? Noel?
Yes. Yes.
Thank you. Vogel?
Yes.
Motion passes.
Okay. The next item is item I2. This is the added item, the Loch Alpine fireworks permit application. And we all reviewed, oops, we got an echo. We all reviewed this and so I don't know that we need to, go into all of the details of the Loch Alpine fireworks application. The reason this is coming back is the folks at Loch Alpine requested that we take this back up again and approve it given the changed circumstances in the control of the COVID pandemic. Oops, you're muted, Jessica.
Bob is here if you'd like me to bring him in.
Sure. Bob Sendra is the point person for Loch Alpine on this matter. Bob?
I'm here.
Hi, Bob.
Hello.
And we can see you now too.
Good.
Do you want to add any comments in terms of the reapplication?
No new comments about the display or the positioning of it or the positioning of the people around the lakes. No. Our only problem here is that if we don't know one way or the other, if it's left tabled, and if we're not allowed to have it now, we need to know that so that we don't lose our deposit. And then we would like to know if it's not approved now, is there a likelihood that it would be approved later in the year?
Mm-hmm.
Clerk Flintoff.
Sure. I just want to say one condition that has changed since the last time the board looked at this is the state has relaxed their requirements. They issued a May 6th gatherings and face mask order, which loosened the restrictions, the requirements on face masks outdoors. and the number of families from different households. And so I read that and considering, you know, that so much of this display, so many of the viewers watch from their homes, there's no central gathering point. I think that the conditions have changed enough based on the conditions that have changed are that the state restrictions have loosened up, and we have at least a practice, we don't have to follow, but a practice of not being more restrictive than the standing state or county orders.
Would you like to make a motion, Clerk Flintoff?
If there's no more discussion, I'd like to make a motion to approve the Loch Alpine fireworks application.
Is there support? Support by Palmer. So motion by Flintoff, support by Palmer. Are there further comments or questions from members of the Board of Trustees? Trustee Noel.
I'm ambivalent about this because we are still in a pandemic. We still have some issues here, and yes, I know things are relaxing, and I'm glad, but I'm on the fence with this one right now.
Are there other comments or questions? Oh, I'm sorry, Trustee Corto.
Just a question for Mr. Sundra. You mentioned that if we didn't permit it for the 4th of July, might we permit it later? I wonder if you could expand a little bit on your thoughts or ideas of what this might be.
Well, the fireworks display would be held later, most likely on Labor Day weekend.
The date for this is the end of June, if I remember correctly.
Correct,
Is that
June 26th right now.
Are there further comments or questions? I'm sorry, Treasurer Palmer.
You know, we all have had a long year and a half. Everybody in attendance at this meeting. The restrictions have been relaxed. They may be relaxed further, which was part of the comment made by the governor. We need to be able to celebrate something. And this is an outdoor event. So we need to move forward so we can do it on the 4th of July. The day we celebrate our country.
Are there other comments or questions from the members of the Board of Trustees? Are there comments or questions from the members of, or comments, I should say, from the public?
Zoom hands? I see none. Will?
In that case, please call the roll.
Hathaway?
Yes.
Palmer?
Yes.
Flintoff? Yes. Corto?
Yes.
Jerome?
Yes.
Noel?
Yes.
Vogel?
Yes.
Happy 4th of July. Thank you, Bob. Thanks for your persistence and thank you for coming back too.
Thank you very much. Please, Jessica, if you could let me know when that permit is signed, I'll stop by and pick it up.
You got it. I'll have it by the end of the day tomorrow.
Fine. Thank you very much.
Okay. Thanks,
Thank
Bob.
you all.
Next is new business. First item is item J1, possible action to approve a short-term contract with Diane Benson for Human Resources Services. And Jessica, you prepared the contract. Would you like to introduce this?
Sure, happy to. Diane Benson, I just pulled her in here as a panelist if she'd like to join. Wonderful community volunteer that Will tapped Diane Benson and David Reed to serve on the Township Administration Committee. So that's how we've gotten to know Diane. Her resume with her contact info redacted is included. Has just retired from an incredible career and human resources at U of M and other places. We have all identified for a long time in this board in particular, the need for some professional human resources support. And both models imagine some, propose some permanent part-time HR support. This would be a short-term contract. The Township Administration Committee voted unanimously to recommend this to the board. The Appendix A lists the 4 areas that she would focus in on. Diane is not interested in a long-term position and would not be applying for any permanent position with the township. So she would also help us shape what those what that human resources position might look like. The first section, there's some very urgent employment law regulation policies we need to get in place or refresh. Some big recruitments happening right now that we are going to ask for her assistance on, and then some oversight and administration support. Any questions for Diane? Diane, you were here and not here. Or any questions about the proposed contract?
I'm here now.
Thank you, Diane.
Are there any questions, comments from the Board of Trustees? Well, I will comment. Diane, I'm so glad that you are willing to take this on, to interrupt your retirement to help out the township. I appreciate your contributions, your many contributions already, and I'm glad that you're going to be helping us with some of these important tasks going forward.
Thanks, Diane.
Are there, I guess this is a matter that also is open to public comment. Are there comments from members of the public?
Zoom hand, Bill Stein. Bill.
I'm sorry, it's not Bill, it's me, Pat Stein. I'm using
Even
Bill's
better,
Zoom.
Pat Stein. Hi, Pat.
Hi. So I just wanted to put my support of Diane Benson. I reached out to a former coworker of hers. She was actually my friend's supervisor. And she replied today to say, in addition to the general fact that my friend thought that Diane would be a great addition to Scio Township is HR, but she also said that working under Diane, she was easy to work with, kind, funny, and helpful. So those are all real good things, and I think Scio could use that. So that's all I have to say on the subject.
Thank you very much. Next up, Jillian Carey, followed by Rob Pattinson. Jillian. Thank you, Jillian. Rob Pattinson.
I propose a standing ovation for Diane Benson because she is stepping into a township in crisis, and talk about stepping up and helping when we really need it. Well done. Thank you.
Yay. Any other Zoom hands? And I know Diane will report that she has also talked with some staff already for the later item, and around Township Hall. A couple staff people have already said, I'm so excited we're going to be able to work with Diane Benson. So way to go, Diane. Jackie, here's a hand up.
Trustee Corto.
Thank you. I just had a quick question. It looks like a very excellent and needed list of things that you're setting out to do in Appendix A here. I do notice that your contract term is about 3 months, and I'm I'm wondering, I hope you're able to achieve all this. I'm wondering whether this actually is a realistic amount of work for a 3-month term.
I hope it is. We'll do as much as we can.
And the contract terms allow us to extend month to month if we wish to, but hopefully by that point we'll have a clear idea where we're going.
Trustee Noel?
Yes, I wanted to say I've enjoyed working with Diane on the administration committee, and she has been easy to work with, positive, brought insight to the group, and I'm sure we're going to be able to hear from her later when we discuss issues, and she'll be able to bring that same insight to our discussion. Thanks.
Are there any other comments either from the Board of Trustees or from the public? Seeing none, please call the roll. Or do we have a motion?
Let me make the motion, the model motion.
So you make the model motion. Do we have support?
I'll support.
Okay, so motion by Flintoff, support by Noel. Please call the roll.
Hathaway,
Yes.
Palmer,
Yes.
Flintoff, yes, Corto,
Yes.
Jerome,
Yes.
Noel,
Yes.
Vogel,
Yes.
motion passes.
Thank you.
Thank you, Diane.
The next item is item J2. This is possible action on the Ann Arbor Track Club's request for road closures. This is related to the annual Dexter Ann Arbor Run. Do we have a representative from the Ann Arbor Track Club here to speak to this item on the agenda?
What's the name I'm looking for, Will?
Yeah, here I am, Doug Goodhue.
Oh, there.
Hello, Doug.
I'm a longtime member of the Ann Arbor Track Club, and I've been handling this permit situation with Scio Township for a number of years. So we do have a approval, by the way. The approvals are set both with the city of Ann Arbor and with the city of Dexter. We also have a contract in place with the sheriff. So everyone is on board, and we'd just like to see Scio Township also come on board with us to close the roads on the August the 15th of this coming year. We're normally a June event, but we worked out a deal with the city of Ann Arbor because of the pandemic to move it from June to August, and all of that, all those agreements are in place now.
And I believe we have a model motion that is to approve a resolution that was prepared by the township attorney for this purpose. My understanding is that the Dexter Ann Arbor Run, the organizers need the support of the township in order to approach the road commission for the road closures.
From both Scio and also Ann Arbor Township, and then we can get our right of way from the road commission.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Goodhue. Are there any questions or comments for members of the Board of Trustees?
Just a brief clerical, just that I would move to update the dates on the resolution to make it today's date, and I can make those changes.
Thank you. Okay, so, oops, I got the wrong resolution in front of me. That's the problem with scrolling through a deck like this. Is someone ready, prepared to make the model motion to?
I'll move the model resolution.
All right, moved by Jerome. Support by Vogel. Are there any comments from members of the public?
Any Zoom hands? I see none.
All right, then please call the roll.
Hathaway,
Yes.
Palmer,
Yes.
Flintoff, yes, Corto,
Yes.
Jerome,
Yes.
Noel,
Yes.
Vogel,
Yes.
motion passes.
Thank you. The next item is the possible action in the Parkland Plaza Pathway Project construction contract. And I believe Matt Parks is here, prepared to speak to that.
Yep, I am here to answer any questions, but in your packet, you should have a recommendation of award letter dated May the 6th, recommending.
Oops, we lost him.
I'm sorry. I think he's coming in here for this video.
You guys just added me. Sorry,
My apologies, Matt. Go ahead.
You're good. You're good. So I don't know where I cut off, but in your packet, you should have a May 6th recommendation of award letter. OHM advertised the bid set. 7 or 8 contractors obtained sets of plans. We received bids from 2 bidders, Fonson and E.T. McKenzie. Fonson Construction Company, who we have experience with. They've worked for the road commission. They've worked in and out of the township over the past decade as either prime or sub, and do quite a bit of work in Washington County, and is very much qualified to do this job. Was the low bidder. We're recommending the award to Fonson and the amount shown in the May 6th letter. We are recommending a contingency budget a little bit larger than what we would for this type of a project, just because I know there's some discussion about potentially adding a little bit more sidewalk on the very southern tip of the project, and we're going to be meeting on that next week. But regardless, any expenditure over the 329,000 and change would require a change order and also coming back to the Board of Trustees for approval. So that's that. And also in the packet, we have our proposal for construction engineering services, which includes staking, material testing, all the things that we're going to need to do to administer the contract on behalf of the township. And I'm happy to answer questions on either the recommendation of award letter or the OHM CE services proposal.
Are there any questions from members of the Board of Trustees or comments? I don't see any hands raised. Are there any comments or comments from the members of the public?
Comments? I see none.
All right, would someone like to move the model motion? Moved by Vogel. Support by Jerome. Please call the roll.
Hathaway,
Yes.
Palmer,
Yes.
Flintoff, yes. Courtois,
Yes.
Jerome,
Yes.
Noel,
Yes.
Vogel,
Yes.
motion passes.
Thank you. We will get to work on that.
Thanks, Matt.
Thanks, Matt.
So the next item is item J4. This is the possible action discussion of Scio Township administrative structure. And as was said earlier in the meeting, Diane Benson will make the presentation of this agenda item. At the conclusion of Diane's presentation, I will call on each member of the Board of Trustees in turn to make a comment. Once each member of the board has had a chance to speak, we will open it up for those members of the public who have not already spoken on this topic and have so that they can have an opportunity to do so. Diane, are you ready?
Oh,
What, pardon?
I've got a clarification question, Will.
Sure.
So you said you'll open it up for board members to make a comment. We may need to have the option of making more than a comment because we might want to have some discussion, some questions, some opportunity for back and forth communication, deliberation, which we haven't had on this yet. So I think that requires more than a comment, the option for more than a comment.
The option for more than a comment. I hear you. I just want to make sure that we have an opportunity to go around and everyone to have a turn.
That's fine.
But we can go around again if people have more that they want to say.
Okay.
Diane.
Okay, good evening, everybody. Can you hear me? Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Good. As you know more about me than I know about you, since you've seen my resume, going back to my days of banking, as I told Donna a while ago, that I like numbers if they have dollar signs in front of them. That's the accounting that I like to do. I have been serving as a volunteer on the Township Administration Committee for the last couple of months. We've been meeting on a regular basis and having lots and lots of discussion about different models, etc. My background is in human resources, and I have retired from the University of Michigan after over 25 years. My specialties, although I was a generalist, when I was in the College of LS&A, Literature, Science, and the Arts for about 12 years, my area of expertise was recruitment. So part of what the township really, really needs is to beef up the recruiting efforts. You saw in the materials of other things that I'll be working on as far as employment recruitment. And I'm really looking forward to helping get everything started, because whatever model is chosen, whoever we need to hire, you can only hire the best person if you post the job correctly and clearly, and do some recruiting beyond, probably beyond Southeastern Michigan. So I've served on several university-wide initiatives. I was actually on the project team that started the first rollout of an applicant management system, which back in the day, we had an 8-page paper application, which then we actually automated. So that was a fun project. And the classification system project, where we were thinking we were going to look at all 2,500 classifications at the university and narrow down the number of classifications. We ended up with 3,200. So we actually increased them. I think that serving on these initiatives and others have given me a lot of relevant change management experience, including reflecting on lessons learned. And I feel that this experience is essential to the township's reorganizational efforts. So my presentation for this evening, there is a lot of material in the packets. I'm not going to go over word for word. What I want to do is go through some portions of the material and highlight certain areas. So what I'm going to cover this evening is the background of the committee, what the committee has worked on or discussed, the 2 emerging models, and using the org charts of each model, I'm going to highlight new positions and changes to reporting structure. Present the themes that I heard from some township employees, and then talk about next steps. So as you probably know, the committee was charged by the board with a resolution on March 9th. And these are the highlights of what the charge included: was to create positions of township administration, define the roles and responsibilities of the positions, identify critical skills, knowledge, and attributes for each of the positions, and look into budgetary considerations. Committee members besides myself included Jessica Flintoff, Will Hathaway, Kathy Knoll, Donna Palmer, and David Reed. The committee met almost weekly with meetings open to the public. We discussed the roles of the elected officials of the township. So we did talk about the treasurer, the clerk, the supervisor, and what their current duties are. We talked about needs that we identified for the township to make it successful. And then we began to talk about the organization of the township's administrative activities. And it would have been nice to come to one model, but we didn't. So there are 2 different models that I'm going to present this evening. To help you understand the activities of the committee, it is also important to share the board motion that was passed on April 27th. The main takeaways from that are that the board directed the Township Administration Committee to submit complete proposal or proposals, which the committee reviewed. We were to publicly post all our documents by May 7th at 10 a.m. Each proposal will include documents to support that organization. Actionable items should be approved by the township attorney. We were to include budget impacts and then discussion by the board today, May 11th. All materials were eventually included so that the Board of Trustees and the public could view them. There may be some actionable items remaining that still require township attorney approval. I'm not sure if anything happened today about that. Identification of the needs of the township. You know, we talked a lot about what the township needs. We took a look at a survey that was done with employees who brought out such things as they wanted somebody to talk to other than their supervisor. We came up with some specific areas: human resources, project management, information technology, finance, sustainability, community development, and general administration. In both models, these needs will be fulfilled by either new positions or with professional contracts. Okay. So, as I said, two models emerged. The committee spent a great deal of time discussing different organizational models to meet the needs of the BOT and the residents and the employees of the township. The two models were called the shared governance model and the township administrator model. Materials in the agenda packet for each model include an overview, an organizational chart, position descriptions, resolutions, and budget ramifications. Both models contain elements that are very different from any administrative organization the township has had in the past. You will see that the needs in township administration the committee identified are represented in both models, although they may be labeled differently. One position both models have consensus for example, is the need for a deputy treasurer who will report directly to the treasurer. In fact, this position is required by statute. The other is for the supervisor to have a full-time appointment. Next, I will present each model referencing information in the documents published by the authors. I will be using the org chart as a reference. And Jess, could you put up the shared governance model, please? And right now I can't see it. Here we go. Perfect. So could you just show the model on the my left? Okay. So while Jess is doing that, I just want to briefly talk about the overview of the shared governance model. This is built upon checks and balances built into the township design. The Board of Trustees is responsible for the administration of the township. It is not simply an oversight body. Checks and balances is a critical way we can proactively protect ourselves against fraud, waste, and abuse. Now, meeting the outstanding needs identified in the fiscal year 22 budget requests are still pending. Some of these are for the fire chief, general administrative support, office coordinator, some staff resources for the different committees. This model reduces the privatization of township services by investing in diverse professionals who provide shared services from across the township's distinct areas of work, which would over time save the township money and improve services to residents. Some items such as GIS mapping, project management, community engagement, and grant writing will be done by staff, not by consultants. Shared administrative and information management services to fire, water, and sewer, and the rest of the township and its committees through a reorganized and up-leveled administrative services team. And I'll talk about that in a minute, a little bit more. This will adapt our structure to respect and rely on current workforce, broader and deeper skill sets. Okay. Now, at the top, what we have here, and it's very, very tiny, is the clerk. And reporting to the clerk would be the Sheriff's Patrol Services and the fire chief and all the firefighters, investigators, etc., underneath the fire chief. It's essential that the fire department continues to report directly to an officer as a structural protection against the township board ever being able to say, we didn't know. Also reporting to the clerk is the finance director and the finance manager. So that is a continuation of what is right now. The treasurer will have a deputy treasurer. As you may know, we have a retirement coming up. And we do have an assistant assessor that right now is providing services as a deputy treasurer. The new deputy treasurer will be a new position and more formalized. The deputy treasurer in this case will provide support to the treasurer, will process daily mail and drop box cash receipts. They will maintain accounts receivables and provide support to the utility department as needed. And this will be a regular full-time position. Okay. Reporting to the clerk, the supervisor, and the treasurer altogether will be these two new roles of administrative services manager and human resources. The administrative services manager will be also a regular full-time position who will assume the sole responsibility for functional areas of service and will coordinate and implement program planning and define staffing requirements, resource allocation, and identification of future resource needs. Some of the more detailed duties will be that the administrative services manager will plan, monitor, evaluate, and supervise the township's administrative services and information management across all areas of the township. So what you see there is the administrative services manager has reporting to that individual, the office coordinator, administrative clerk, and IT managed services, which actually is a consultant or contractor. We will have what's called a township shared services team. So if, for example, if there were a vacancy of somebody in utilities and they could not, some help was needed with billing, then one of the individuals, the office coordinator, administrative clerk, could fill in for that position. I actually supervised at the university a group of regular staff who were made up of administrative staff and managers who were dispatched when there were vacant positions due to somebody, the position being vacant, due to somebody left their position, or if somebody was out on an extended leave. So I'm very familiar with this. It works really well. It gives the staff the opportunity to learn new skills. Other duties of the administrative services manager is that they will serve as the township's chief information officer, and that's where you see the tie-in with IT managed services. They will also serve as the township's training officer to provide required and recommended trainings including software technology and all the other trainings that need to go on with employees. The township, the administrative services manager will seek and apply for funds from various government agencies, private foundations, and other private contributors to augment the township funds. And they will oversee and develop the GIS operations across water and sewer, parks, pathways, assessing open space and protected natural areas. So all the areas. This person will be a data expert. Okay. Then the human resources position will be a part-time, 20 hours per week position, and it will work on classification and staffing structure, employment law, regulations, performance management to develop a performance management system, learning and development, compensation, recruitment and retention of staff and volunteers, and staff a township compensation committee and a board personnel committee. Okay. And then we have our relationship with the township attorney, who does have a relationship with the clerk, supervisor, and treasurer. And then we have the supervisor, which states in there to have the supervisor have a salary increase and a full-time position. The supervisor will have a new position reporting to him called the Sustainable Development Director. This is a new position that actually will work with and plan, monitor, evaluate, and supervise the operation of the township's park paths and preserves, working with transportation alternative programs, public transport, public transit, roads, community development. They'll serve as the township's climate change officer and have partnerships with ATA, the Road Commission, and Watts. So this will be a job that will be growing as with sustainability, with community development, etc. So it's an important position. The supervisor will continue to the Sustainable Development Director will supervise the planner and engineer, and the supervisor will continue to have code enforcement officer, zoning official responsibilities, and supervise the utilities and grounds director, with several of the positions under that. Okay. There are additional accompanied documents, including resolutions, delegating certain authorities to the supervisor, clerk, treasurer, and employees that go along with this model, and budgetary costs with the new positions, which range between $400,000 and $450,000, not including the supervisor's salary increase. So next, I would like to go through the township administrator model. And the overview for that is, as we all know, the township has been experiencing the absence of a township administrator for almost 20 months. And we, in both of the models, are working towards having some more township administration. The township administrator will be focused on internal operations in the township. They will be responsible for the working relationships of the parts of Scio Township government, the implementation of organizational policies, including the new initiative to update human resource procedures, and they will be the one who makes sure that everything works as it should. The township administrator will report not just to the supervisor, but to the entire Board of Trustees. The full-time supervisor will serve as the primary external contact, receiving inquiries and requests from the public, overseeing communications and representing the township in discussions with outside partner organizations such as the Washtenaw County Road Commission. The supervisor will focus on growth-oriented projects such as pedestrian pathways, public access to parks and nature preserves, and road improvements, sustainability, and other initiatives to respond to the ever-growing needs of Scio Township. This is a centralized oversight of operations, which allows for efficient coordination of organization-wide initiatives, such as performance evaluation. The Township Administrator's singular focus on internal operations will provide greater attention to staff working relationships. So looking at the organizational chart for this particular model, we'll move from the left to the right. And on the left is the clerk, who will have the deputy clerk reporting. And then next to that is a clerk and supervisor, which will have the finance team reporting to it. So the finance director and finance manager will be reporting to a combination of the clerk and supervisor. As you know, the treasurer is responsible for revenues, the clerk is responsible for payables and keeping records, and the supervisor is responsible for the budget oversight, such as audits and reports. Placing the finance staff in a reporting relationship to only one of the elected officers can create a problem with checks and balances, because it effectively means that the officers tasked with specific tasks do not have the personnel assigned to them to do so. Therefore, the finance staff needs to work for the supervisor as much as they need to work for the clerk, and we must also provide the treasurer with a deputy treasurer to address the pending turnover in the assessing department and be responsive to her statutory responsibilities. Okay, then we move on to the township administrator, who will be reporting to, as I said before, to the Board of Trustees. And the township administrator will have several direct reports. The township administrator will have the fire chief and the associated 9 full-time equivalents and 10 part-time individuals. We'll have the human resources person. We'll have the office coordinator and one other office employee, and we'll have utilities reporting, the utilities director with 6 full-time equivalents, and will be the person that will work with the contractors, the sheriff, planning, engineering, and IT. So the township administrator's duties include attending all meetings of the township board, but without the right to vote. They will assist the supervisor in the BOT agenda and meeting packet, and will track implementation of BOT decisions. The township administrator will assist in preparing and administering the annual budget under the policies formulated by the township board. They will track implementation of BOT approved actions, and will organize and chair the biweekly management meetings. With human resources reporting to the township administrator, they will assume the duties as the personnel director of all township employees, including human resources and functions such as hiring, training, performance review, etc. And facility management, responsible for the preservation and maintenance of township property, tools, and equipment. Excuse me. As you can see, the contracts will be, the responsibility for the contracts to coordinate and administer township contract negotiations will fall under the township administrator. And they will also act as the purchasing agent for the township. And then the supervisor to the far left, the supervisor will maintain relationship with the assessor and staff, and will have a project manager reporting to him. And this is a very nimble position. As projects come into the township, the project manager will be the person that will take the lead on the project, reporting to the supervisor, and provide assistance throughout the implementation of a particular project. Okay, that ends my presentation on the two models. Next, I wanted to talk about the themes that I heard from township employees. The two models, just as they were shared with you, were shared with all of the employees of the township, and they were invited to contact me. I will not share any confidences, but wanted to share some of the themes that I heard. One is that supervisors need assistance with position descriptions and recruitment. Other staff have expressed a need for an interest in professional development, particularly in cross-training. And another item that was expressed to me was clearer communication from the township administration so that they knew what was going on in the township, so they would be able to serve the township residents in a better way. Next steps for these two models. As with all large-scale changes in organizational structure, there are additional steps beyond just the decision-making. Once the decision is made by the Board of Trustees, you will need to consider the following: communication, clear communication of the decision to all residents, volunteers, and township employees. And then you will need to develop an implementation timeline. We still need to work on final position descriptions for the new positions and start the recruitment and hiring of those positions. Down the road, we need to have assessment. We need to look at what worked, what didn't work, lessons learned. In my opinion, each member of the Board of Trustees should make the decision based on the model that they are confident will be in the best interest of the township for the residents and the employees of the township. Whatever model is chosen, it will only be successful if everyone can come together and put aside any differences. Now, each member of the board will be able to offer their thoughts and raise any questions or concerns. The public will also have that opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you, Diane. And I want to also thank all the other members of the administrative committee, just as Diane did. Clerk Flintoff, Treasurer Palmer, Trustee Knoll, and former Trustee Reed, who worked together, all of us worked together over the past 9 weeks to produce the two models for the Board of Trustees to consider. We've had some very good conversations. Sometimes the conversations were contentious, but we were always focused on solving the problem of the township's administrative structure and the job functions. My own thinking evolved as we worked together. While we still disagree on a central question, whether the township administrator model offers the best solution, the two models do have a lot in common. And I hope that whatever administrative structure is chosen by the Board of Trustees, that we will move forward with a positive attitude to make that model work well for all Scio residents. And now I'd like to start the round of comments by calling on Trustee Jerome.
I just want to thank the public. I want to thank the trustees especially the employees of the township that participated in the survey and spoke up, as well as the administration committee for all their hard work and participation in developing these different models. I was hopeful for a consensus, which we haven't been able to find, but after careful consideration of the supporting materials, input from the Zoom public, from the public at large, and the trustees themselves, I am in support of the administrative model for township governance.
Trustee Noel, are you prepared to speak?
Yeah, I can start. As Diane commented, this model, either model, is a major change for Scio Township, but the manager model, as I see it, is a dramatic change in the government organizational structure, and it's fraught with potential problems. We've heard from residents about a range of issues that they've had in the past with Jack and Bryce. And my concern is the inherent structure of this centralized approach will make it very easy for some of those same problems to occur in the future. I like the shared governance model because there's more potential for checks and balances in multiple areas. I know, Will, you commented in some of your materials that in the financial area, there was the possibility for checks and balances, but there need to be checks and balances in many areas, not just the financial area. I'm concerned that the model, the organizational structure that you're proposing requires someone an administrator or manager to be very knowledgeable in many areas: fire, HR, utilities, sheriff's services, planning, engineering, IT. They sort of have to be a jack of all trades. And we know from prior manager searches that those people are hard to find. So I am not confident that we're going to find such a person. I am concerned about the change in your proposed model that puts the fire chief under a township administrator. The fire chief the last year has been reporting to Jessica. It has gone well, and I think that Jessica should continue to provide a degree of administrative support for the fire chief. We heard concerns expressed that a manager or administrative model could stifle or hinder communication to the entire board from the fire chief. So we've had problems in the past when that model has been in place. We all know what the problems were. I'm expressing concern that this could be a setup for these same problems to occur in the future. And also, just as a side issue, what if the potential township administrator that we might want to hire has no experience supervising a fire department? Wouldn't the residents in the township be better served by having Jessica continue to provide this service because she has experience now doing it? I have some other concerns. I'm going to stop there and hopefully let others talk, and then I want to express a few more concerns.
Trustee Corto, are you prepared to speak?
Sure. Well, again, I want to thank everybody for all the effort put into this. It's clear that there's been a lot of sustained thinking about the township needs and the best staffing to move forward. I still keep coming back around to, I think there are a lot of elements in common with these two different approaches, and where they aren't in common, they are complementary. And I still hope that as we move forward, rather than simply embracing one, we can still continue to think about what emerged in each model that were strengths that we could continue to embrace going forward. I do like, for instance, the real detail given to the sustainable development and community planning position. I think there's some very good strengths there. I do think many of the functions of the administrative services position proposed are needed. And yet I'm still wondering about two of the initial goals that I saw in this process were the need for continuity and the need for implementation of the board, for really following through to make sure board decisions get implemented. And I'm still not seeing exactly how that's happening in the shared services model. I guess my viewpoint about if we were to go forward with a township administrator model is that we should emphasize in all our materials that the administrator should not be a gatekeeper trying to keep things from the board, but rather one who is a collator and a compiler and a collaborator who brings focus to everything coming from the township to the board so that we consider it in a more reasoned way with all the materials in hand that we need. And after giving this a lot of thought and hearing from many people who've spoken up on Zoom and also in other communications, I will say that on balance at this point in time, I still am finding the administrator model meets better over all the needs that I have heard, and at the same time still hope that we can find ways to embrace the best elements of both.
Thank you. Trustee Vogel.
So my sense, being around the township for a few years, is that we need someone, there was a phrase used earlier, kind of center of gravity. With the growth in this township, I am missing that very seasoned, experienced, knowledgeable, township knowledgeable person who can help us, partner with us to manage the work of the township. So much of the shared governance model just feels to me like the internal processes and information flows and coordination, and like I hear GIS or data, and I'm thinking, gosh, I want a manager in place who is going to think really strategically about the growth in the township, and man, what does that mean for water and sewer over the next coming years, and how do we fund that, and what does it mean about how we negotiate with developers in the township today, and what does the future of fire look like, and gosh, the zoning's changing, buildings are getting higher, there's a fire truck. I want someone who brings a strategic perspective, rolls up their sleeves, knows how to go after big money to help make lots of good things happen in the township, the federal funds and the like. I find we are lacking seniority. We are lacking experience. And I feel like we got lots of pieces, but not that center of gravity that pulls it together. I like the idea of an internal, external. God, I had such prepared notes and thoughts, and I feel like I'm rambling. Will's pulled me into lots of partnership roles with him. And I feel like in some ways I'm doing some of the manager things. We had a meeting over at the road commission, and the new managing director was so thrilled to have somebody from Scio show up. They missed the ongoing relationship at a senior level. And that's true with key partners all over the township. All right, last couple things. I hear all our residents. I personally think the world of Will. I admire how, Supervisor Hathaway, I admire how he thinks. I admire the strategic perspective, the generous heart, and I am so sorry to hear perceptions, and I respect them. And I just find myself thinking about how we have built the perceptions, because I just want to speak to the strength of the individuals on this board and whatever. I'm not going to go down that road right now. What's my last point? My last point is we grew this into something very complicated. I started with an assumption when we got elected, we were going to pick up from where the last board left off. They initiated a manager search. It didn't come to fruition. I thought we were going to pick that up and just move the ball forward and get this done. And then it just grew into so much more, and it all got bundled together, and now it's this big multi-layered thing. And okay, but you can't eat the whole elephant at once. I am in favor of this administrator model. I would like to call this person a manager. We need management, leadership, strategic experience in this township. I would like to put a stake in the ground and start there. And I think there's a whole layer of decisions and pieces to build into the puzzle that we have to do collaboratively going forward. I thank this committee. It must have been really hard. and I'm sorry I'm being so long. I am keenly aware of the intense stress this has been on everybody. To watch this level of conflict, this level of, I will leave it at that. It has been very difficult to be aware of, to hold, to observe, etc. We need to step up the civility. That's all I'm going to say right now.
Thank you. Clerk Flintoff?
Sure. I want to thank Diane for the overview and everybody for the work. I will say, I think that the committee process was more difficult because the supervisor's model kept evolving in different directions until the last minute. And so I think that's part of it. What you're seeing is one more fully formulated model that's better researched. And the shared governance model is what townships do. Out of 1,250 townships in Michigan, you are hard pressed to find one with a manager or administrator. That is not typical. And it's not typical for all of the reasons that we've suffered through. Here in Scio, you have to look no farther than Northfield, whose manager is vacant. That's the only other one in Washtenaw County. And as I've maintained, we have outgrown the manager model. Now, what I have proposed is 2 administrators. One is the administrative services manager. And Jackie, to your point, that person maintains the work. It's in the job description. That person maintains the work plan for the board and implements the administrative activities that need to happen before and after every board meeting there. But I see the Director of Sustainable Community Development, forgive me for the title, that can be changed, and the Administrative Services Manager. Those are the 2 grown-ups who are going to be here. Those are the 2 professionals who are going to be here long after we're gone. And so I see that as building capacity, saving funding. We outsource so many things that more professional staff could do. Grant writing, GIS, we're about to have none available in-house when Jim Murdy leaves, and we have statutory responsibilities to carry it out. So our OHM bills just keep going up. We pay Carlisle Wortman and OHM for things that we should be able to do in-house. And so I guess I would just say, as somebody who has done a fair amount in local government and bringing down big federal funds and things, like we need more people who are able to jump in and work and get things done. So I think we're all in agreement here. I just see this more as 2 administrators rather than 1 administrator. I also think a lot of the feedback, the reason why neither of these came with recommendation was because Diane was doing a very good job of being Switzerland, and we never put it to a vote. We never forced it. But there was a lot of feedback in the committee on the administrator model, and a couple pieces very significant that weren't taken into account. That the number of people reporting to the township administrator is way too high for somebody to be able to effectively manage. Secondly, if COVID has taught us anything, we need to have more of a direct connect from the fire chief to the utilities director. Jack and I started in January 2020, both supervising utilities and fire. So I would just also say for residents and the board, the administrator model is very bloated. You are asking too little of your clerk and too little of your supervisor. Now, do I want anybody working 60 hours a week? No. Do I think it will get easier when people are able to be here in the office and coordinating and more efficiencies? Yes, I do. I think there's a learning curve. I think COVID is a terrible time to start a new job, but I think that there is way too little on the clerk's plate and way too little on the supervisor's plate under that model. I think it's bloated. So I also want to share, and this is a true caution. The resolutions delegating certain authorities, those are probably the most important documents to look at. The org chart and the resolutions delegating certain authorities. And as a board, I really urge you to make sure you understand what's on there, because what's being proposed under the administrator model is not going back to a status quo we had, is not picking up where the last board left off, Jane. It changes a lot, and it changes a lot significantly and in ways that I'm not even sure that the supervisor fully understands, frankly. I want to say one major change, and my concern for staff is that it delegates the hiring and firing away from the board down to the administrator, to certain directors. It's different for every area, but as you read through that, the hiring and firing would be delegated. The township board has never delegated that authority. Now, that doesn't mean that it doesn't come with recommendation, a final approval, but I believe very strongly that that authority needs to stay with the board. I know Jim Fink is here, but I would ask him to look at that. We would have to adjust certainly our personnel handbook. I don't know if it conflicts with the CBA. In terms of the joint supervision of the finance director and finance manager, A question I have for the supervisor is why? I understand once a year, you prepare the budget. We share staff all the time. You know, is there a problem? Is there a lack of access? What problem are you trying to solve? But I also think, Jim, I have a hard time. I can't believe that that's actually legal, the actual authority cited. The cited authority is the Uniform Accounting and Budgeting Act. And Jim, feel free to hop on here. But this is a problem because there's a couple clauses in that resolution there that I just think are legally incorrect. And I don't know where our township attorney stands, but they're important paragraphs. They're the paragraphs that state that whereas MCL 41.65, that the supervisor has certain authorities under the budget, and that the supervisor may refuse to delegate those authorities to staff. So chapter 41 is the chapter of the law that talks about townships, the duties of the board, officers, all of our jobs. And then there's another chapter, chapter 2, the Uniform Accounting and Budget Act, which talks about how counties, cities, villages, townships, school districts, every local unit of government must do certain accounting and budgeting functions throughout the year. And so under the Budget Act, typically a township clerk is delegated by resolution in the budget process as the chief fiscal officer for the year. We just went through this, remember, with our budget adoption, and the supervisor by resolution as the CAO. But I have to say, anything delegated by resolution by the board is not a statutory duty. So this is really a legal question. I would just say, Jim, have you signed off on this? Because I'm sure it hasn't come up before, but I cannot believe that this is legally proper. Hi, Jim.
I'm not prepared to answer that specific question tonight, and so I will take it and I will get back to the board.
Okay. And the last thing I would say is, you know, I really think that we shouldn't be asking less of ourselves, particularly without the consultation and input of staff. When we have Bellman, when we have water rates going on, you know, Will, you say you're interested in growth and things like that. I don't see how you achieve that without also having some operational connection to our planner, our engineer, and our water and sewer system. I mean, so much of this is wrapped up in that. And I'll say too, I think your numbers are low. I told you this. I know they weren't incorporated in the budget estimates. You know, Jack and my last negotiations with the last township manager broke down. I gave you the details on that, but there's about a 6 to 12 month severance package we can plan on because they last about 4 to 5 years, and car allowance and all of that. So I would estimate it's about $70,000 more in your model than our others, than the shared governance. So that's all.
Treasurer Palmer, are you prepared?
I am. It's been a long, hard road. And having been on the previous board, it was difficult with the last manager because we did not know how ill this man was. And he was a man that never said no. So many of the things that have been referenced, I feel were the result of that. Enough said. I too have appreciated, even though sometimes it was difficult, the input from the citizens. It's so good to see citizen involvement. There's been many, many, many years and meetings where there would be nobody there. So it's good to see that interest, and I'm glad. I thank everybody for trying to understand all of this, both models. I too still want a single person in the house. I like pieces of the one model, which is reflected in the administrator model as well. So having said that, and express my thanks again to everyone, I am prepared to make the motion that the Board of Trustees hereby adopt the Township Administrator Model for the administration of Scio, along with the board. The materials that were prepared for this meeting are accepted as fulfillment and an appreciation from the administrative committee. I thank that committee for their service. The various new positions to be authorized and the related delegations of authority are to be refined further and are hereby sent to the township's new human resource consultant to be prepared for a future special Board of Trustees meeting, as would be scheduled by the supervisor. Furthermore, the $22,000 contained in the March 9th motion is hereby authorized for use in an executive search for a township administrator. The supervisor is hereby directed to arrange the services of the Michigan Municipal League or a comparable search firm for this purpose. Now, it's a very detailed motion, but it explains why and where I'm coming from in supporting the administrative model. And that is a motion I'm putting before the board.
There's a motion by Treasurer Palmer. Is there support?
Well,
Yes, Trustee Vogel.
I hear that motion, but as a board member, we didn't hear your voice in the round robin we were finishing up. And I'm curious to hear your perspective on the two models. And then come back to the motion on the board, the motion in front of us. I feel like I'm missing your voice in this.
Once there's a motion on the table, there's time for more comment, and I will comment.
All right, then I'm happy to second this.
Okay, so we have a motion.
I'm happy to second it I want to make sure I understand.
Okay.
Do you want to hold?
Will, are you referencing me, Jane, or Will?
No, you.
Do you want to read through the motion again, because it was kind of long?
It was long.
So why don't you read through it again, and then so we have a motion by Palmer, and I think we have support by Vogel, and but why don't you?
Let's do the read.
Do the read. I propose to the Board of Trustees a motion to hereby adopt the Township Administrator Model for the administration of Scio in conjunction with the board. The materials prepared for this meeting are accepted from the administrative committees, and I thank them for their service. The various new positions to be authorized and the related delegations of authority are to be refined further and are hereby sent to the township's new human resource consultant to prepare for a future special Board of Trustees meeting, which will be scheduled by the supervisor. Furthermore, the $22,000 contained in the March 9th motion is hereby authorized for use in an executive search for a township administrator. The supervisor is hereby directed to arrange the services of the Michigan Municipal League or a comparable search form for this purpose.
Jane, did you have further comment?
So I just want to clarify the middle part of that, and accepting the materials from the administrative committee is closing that committee out now. And this is a transition to the board to progress the decision-making process, correct?
Correct.
All right. Then I will second that.
Okay, so we have a motion by Palmer, support by Vogel. I saw a hand raised by trustee Knoll.
Yeah. Did you want to speak though, Will? I wanted to add a couple more comments, but
I remember that you had more that you wanted to share. So yeah, I will I will comment briefly. There are some things that came up both in comments from members of the public and in the earlier comments by members of the Board of Trustees. One of them is that the administrator job description is sort of sketchy, I guess, is how I would summarize some of the comments. And I want to acknowledge that it is an incomplete job description. The intent that I had back on March 9th, when I first brought forward a proposal to initiate a search for a township administrator, and that I still have, is that the search process will include public input and input from within township government, from Board of Trustees and others, that will shape that job description and sort of polish it for posting. My understanding is if we were to hire the Michigan Municipal League, that is part of the package of services that they include. And so that's sort of an assumption that I had, that fleshing out of that job description would occur in that process. There were a lot of other comments made about sort of things that are included in the resolution, or the resolutions, I guess I should say. And one of the things that I appreciate about the motion that Treasurer Palmer has put forward is that it acknowledges that, these things are still sort of rough. And I think also that because so much of the work was done in the administrative committee, we missed the opportunity for more input from some of the boards and commissions. In particular, I'm thinking of Parks Advisory Board, Transportation Alternative Planning, and to some degree the Planning Commission, in terms of shaping, in particular, this position that we've called a number of different things, to manage projects, to work on sustainability, is broadly defined. That position, I think, really could benefit from more input from some of those groups within the township. So I think that's important. I know the idea of the treasurer, and this is, this I guess goes to comments about sort of the evolving proposal from in terms of the township administrator model. New information emerged in the last few weeks that I was trying to respond to. And so, for example, when I included a deputy treasurer position sort of late in the game, in my proposal, it was a reaction to the fact that we need to have a deputy treasurer in order to support the treasurer. It's a statutory requirement that the work that has been done for the treasurer has been done by people who cannot continue to do it. And in some ways, it was kind of a jury-rigged kind of operation to have them do it in the first place. So I think in some ways, this is a solution to a kind of a longer term issue than I had realized up until a week or so ago. But that hasn't really been worked on enough to be sort of rolled out. I think Treasurer Palmer would agree that you know, there's more work to be done on sort of thinking through what the deputy treasurer position would do, how it would function. And so there's lots of aspects of this that will benefit from Diane's expertise in HR, both in sort of formulating positions, but also in sort of posting positions and structuring processes for evaluating candidates. So I think this is in some ways a way of sort of, you know, cutting the Gordian knot. This has become, as Trustee Vogel was pointing out, this has become very complicated, and in some ways, I still believe that it's a relatively simple decision up front what model we want to choose, and then we build out from that rather than trying to sort of arrive at some conclusion by identifying all of the different positions and all the different functions that need to be filled. So is that enough? And Trustee Knoll, you had asked for a turn to speak.
Okay, I just want to say that I have problems with some of the delegation of authority in the administrator model, particularly in the resolution. And I had asked Jim Fink some specific questions on the Uniform Accounting and Budgeting Act, and as it relates to some of the authority that you appear to be taking. So if we are agreeing on a model tonight, I don't know if we are, but this resolution assigning certain supervisory and human resources functions still needs to be reviewed by our township attorney.
Yes.
And okay, so we are not, okay.
No.
I just want to have clarity on that issue, because there are still some issues in this resolution and questions that I have. And I want to make general comment to all the board members. You know, the board, the power of this board rests in the entire board, with the entire board. If we agree to delegate significant amounts of power, we potentially are giving up some of our responsibilities that we were elected for. I mean, there's a reason we were elected, and some of what's in here, I think, is too broad. So if we have the opportunity later to go through this paragraph by paragraph, I think we're going to need to do that. That's it.
Thank you. Clerk Flintoff.
Sure, a comment and then a question. I just pulled out the MML brochure that they did for us in 2016, 2 manager searches ago. And they did the process for us. And it's very similar to what, you know, Matt did for us 2 years ago. And, you know, I want to say, I know this was in 2016, so maybe things have changed. And they went through a whole process with the board, and we're going to vision together and do all this stuff. And then the ideal candidate. I'm underwhelmed. To be considered a qualified applicant, respondents must first have a bachelor's degree in business administration, public administration, or related field. A master's degree is desired, and 3 or more years of experience in local government management as a township or city manager, assistant township, or department head, and must have knowledge of supervision, HR, budget, finance, public utility management, etc. And that was the same thing with Matt too. I was so underwhelmed at the frankly substandard qualifications that we could ask for in a manager, and being posted at 110, 120K, plus these extraordinary benefits and severance packages, which I think we've been required to pay out, what, 2 out of the last 5 severance packages we've been bound to, and negotiations broke down. Jack and I worked together with Lynn Ladner, trying, and these really posh, bloated, benefits packages go along with this. And I just want to point out the administrative services manager and sustainable development director both required strongly, prefer masters in relevant fields and at least 7 years of experience. So I just want to say, when we're talking about seniority and experience, I think that we are not going to get the kind of person that you think that we're going to get. People who are really good at municipal administration don't apply to be township managers. They apply to be city managers. They apply to be county administrators. They apply to places where it makes sense and places that can pay more. And so again, dig through the piles and piles of we've used expensive recruitment firms twice before, but I haven't seen a definition of what the person would be doing. I have seen only taking away duties and responsibilities that, frankly, the people of Scio, we're a tremendously educated population, and they should expect the 7 of us, and the 3 of us in particular, to have a lot of responsibilities and have a decent number of responsibilities. I'll also say it's unprecedented to be considering increasing the supervisor, clerk, anybody's salary when we're at the same night taking away responsibilities, effectively taking away responsibilities. And I'll have to clarify with you, Donna, on what the motion means. I started typing it because I want to make sure I have it right, but what is included in the model, because we part of why I specified what's included in the proposal so much is because there's things that would be included in our rules of order, put in the supervisor's job description, things that are tucked away in a resolution here and there that need to be sorted out. And so I would say, what do we mean? What do you mean, Donna, by the township administrator model? And then my question to our attorney tonight is, if we were to move ahead with a motion that sounds a lot like what Donna just said, does that have the meaning necessarily under the statute of manager under chapter 41? And does that not matter? And I ask that just because, as you all know, the township board may employ a manager or any number of employees to do whatever we need them to do, with a couple of exceptions. So I just want to be clear, does that necessarily mean manager? Because that if we do in fact officially have a manager, then that changes the whole calculation for the org chart and everything. So I guess it goes back to Donna, when you say you want to adopt the township administrator model, I don't understand what's being adopted. Are you saying to go forward with 1 administrator instead of 2 administrators?
You have the same paperwork presentation that I'm going from.
Mm-hmm.
So you don't need to ask me that question, Jessica. You've got it before you. It's the presentation
Okay,
for a township administrator form of management.
The
And
way,
all this in there.
what, and Donna, one part that I didn't hear, what was that clause that you said with the board? I missed that part.
In conjunction with the board, because that's was very clearly mentioned several times this evening. That I want the public, I want the board to understand, we're not giving carte blanche to a person to run the township. That person will be the central figure. And what is done is in conjunction with the board. We still will be supervising. Now, maybe the choice of words was,
No, nothing wrong with your words. I was just seeking clarity, Donna.
well, I'm just trying to keep this simple. We've got so much resolution, wording, etc. I want to move forward. The motion is directing us to move forward with the administrator type model. And it states in there, the various new positions are to be authorized as presented, and related delegations of authority are to be refined further, because we don't know until we sit down and start preparing, first of all, the requirements and the proposed ad, for better choice of words. That's what that phrase did. We can't do it all tonight in one motion. This gives us the direction, and then we move from there, and well, the various new positions as stated to be authorized, and their delegation of duty authority will be refined further.
yeah, my understanding, Donna, of your motion was that the details, the things that are contained in the two resolutions were to be sort of referred to the HR consultant.
Correct.
To be sort of refined and prepared for the board to consider at a special meeting. Just
That's
on this
correct.
subject, which is actually something that I heard several people suggest this evening. It came up in some conversations with some members of the administrative committee as well, that really we need a special meeting just on this topic where the board can work through some of these sort of rough edges. And I felt that way before. I certainly haven't changed my mind about that. Are there other members of the Board of Trustees who have comments or questions? Jessica, again?
One more question. So what would happen with the supervisor's job description or any of the other materials? Are all of those kind of to be refined? Is anything set by this resolution, by this motion? I'm not trying to be silly. I'm trying to be clear, because we have so many, because I think, we've talked about okay, well, let's move forward on, this HR piece or this sustainability piece and get input from commissions or not. And then it's no break, we got to do this thing first. And so I just want to know what part is set. Is it the model of having one administrator report to the board?
My motion stands as I read it.
Okay.
If there are no other comments from members of the board at this time, are there members of the public who have not already spoken to this issue of the administrative structure?
Does Alex have his hand up? Somebody's.
Is someone's hand up?
Yep. Well, I can see a hand. I don't know what it is. fix it.
Okay,
Never
there's
mind.
some, are you ready for the public, Will?
Yeah, that's what I was seeking, if there were someone who had not already spoken to the topic of the administrative structure earlier in the meeting who
Yeah.
would like to comment at this time.
So I will say, Will, if I'm not mistaken, because it's an action item, on a new question, I don't think that, I think that applies if it's discussion on two, unless you know something I don't. I think that the limit on public comment doesn't apply because there's a motion on the table.
Well, actually, I stated pretty clearly earlier in the meeting that if someone spoke to an issue at the beginning of the meeting, that they would not be speaking to that issue again later in the meeting. It's an option that they could take and choose at that time. And this,
Okay,
this
including a new
this is
action.
the issue of the administrative structure.
So we have Michelle Cody. Michelle, please go ahead. Michelle?
Thank you. I appreciate the unmute on the screen. Sorry
Excuse me.
for the delay. You can hear me all, yes?
Yes.
Okay. This is speaking to the topic you are discussing, the new proposed models or discussion of models from for a full-time supervisor versus a part-time supervisor. Again, I would say it's a lot and it's too fast. It's kind of getting the bum's rush. This seems to me sort of a tale of two developmental goals. There seems to be and I've been a resident of this township for nearly 35 years, and I've seen a great deal of change. The Jackson Road corridor was designed to be the economic growth in the area and principally centered around that. And it seems now there's an either or, pro-con, for retaining a pastoral, lovely farmy township or going to the vision of a busy city municipality. It's sort of at a crossroads, the city versus the country. And there's a lot of money to be made in development. I understand that. I understand Ann Arbor is, I've seen it change vastly since I was an undergraduate there a long time ago. But it was quite a very charming town in 1971 when I was a freshman at the U. But it comes down to what is happening to this whole area. There seems to be a huge movement to development with and giving rezoning and variances and paving over paradise, so to speak. And then concentration of power. It comes back to that as well. It seems that there is, I'd go for the shared governance as a more model that ensures a balance of checks and balances. I don't like the concentration of power. It doesn't seem to allow the board to have its robust, and yeah, it's been challenging, but any kind of consensus is nearly impossible in almost anything. And to have too much in one hand is almost like a fiefdom. And we've seen big government pros and cons in our lifetimes, all of us, I'm sure, on the national scale as well as the local scale. But I just feel that you need the oversight of the board and more and less top down.
Mm-hmm.
So you just say, what is the vision? Preserving the rural charm or developing into a wall-to-wall developed community like Birmingham or in Oakland County or Ann Arbor. So I also come at it from that perspective. So thank you.
Thank you, Michelle. Next up is David Reed, followed by Daryl DePestle. David.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, good. David Reed, Scio Township, 713 Merlin Way. I have to say, I was initially a proponent of the township manager model when I ran with the slate of 6 folks for township board, 4 of whom sit on the board tonight. over the last year, though, my thinking has modified. I've reflected on my 16 years working with the township, 11 years on the board, about how the township model, the township manager model has failed to keep the township informed and keep the township moving forward. The problems we face today are because of a lack of communication between the township manager and the board. And I fear the same will happen. As Jessica pointed out, the requirements that MML have for a township manager are not nearly what we need. The township manager is a generalist and a jack of all trades. And what we need are a couple of real special, very special executive, high or professional people to manage the business of the township. I think what surprises me about my running mates is that they haven't noticed the inconsistencies. And Donna, you should see the inconsistencies in the manager model as presented tonight. The statement, the needs statement states that the supervisor will be concentrating on external issues and that the township administrator will be concentrating on internal issues. And yet, if you look at the org chart, the township manager is responsible for the fire department, the police, the sewer, water, planning, engineering, all of which are outside issues. And he's of course responsible then for the HR, IT, and the office. Basically, he's responsible for he or she is responsible for virtually the entire township. And the resolution states, Donna, if you read the resolution, it states that he has capacity for hire and fire of all of those employees without, or at least presumably it doesn't say with board approval, it just says hire and fire. So I think that is a major inconsistency. Also, part of the job description of the township administrator says that he or she will be the personnel director, and yet we're calling for an HR person. So which is it? Do we have an HR person or do we have a personnel director in a township manager? You can't, basically, that won't work. Plus, in this model, there is no job description for the HR or the project manager. And with this model, you have to understand that the board is giving up significant power. And I just look at what happened just now. The motion was made, or the suggestion was made, that we allow the public to speak, and the supervisor, Fiat, said no, they cannot speak. And I tell my board, my running mates, this is what you're going towards, is basically a person who is taking control and expects everybody to just follow suit. One of the citizen comments we heard was that the administrator model provides a consistency should the entire board either choose not to run or or not be reelected. But I would say that both models do. And in fact, the shared governance, or I forget what the other model is called now, the shared, let's call it the two model, the two manager model, actually does provide the same consistency. In fact, I would say it even provides more, because if one of those managers should happen to retire or take another job in another city, we have a second manager who could fill a stopgap. Maybe they won't have all the same skills, but they will have the managerial skills to at least do a stopgap measure while we find a replacement. Initial numbers show that the costs are similar between the two models, but I think it's been mentioned that those numbers still need to be refined because two of the job descriptions haven't even been submitted. So the jobs may be less or more complex. We don't know that. And I'm extremely disappointed in my running mates that they are so anxious to jump on this model that they won't even take the time to sit in a room, or hopefully maybe within another week or two, we could actually sit in a room and discuss this face to face and work it out. You guys need to have a working session where you discuss this and discuss the two models in the cold light of day and hash out the differences. You can't do this in this type of environment. I mean, already it's 10:30. We've been going at this now for 3.5 hours, and just now at 10:30, we're getting to the meat of this subject. This should have been the very first thing on the agenda. Those committee reports and all that stuff, that was wasn't necessary. This should have been the only item on the agenda, but no, that's not the way it was. This is not just a discussion about Model A or Model B. This is a discussion about the future of the township, the organization, responsibility, and control of the township structure. And the model as described, the township administrator model as described, takes away virtually all of the control of the township from the board and gives it to the administrator. I'm done.
Thank you, David. Next up is Daryl DePesto.
And Kathy, Trustee Noel, can I remind you to keep track of time, please?
She's on mute. I was aware of time. I was giving David the respect of also being a committee member and longtime trustee. So thank you, David. Daryl DePestel.
Yep. Can you hear me?
Yes. Hi, Daryl.
Yeah, Daryl DePestel, 6821 Bridgewood Hills, Scio Township. I will be brief. I want to thank everybody on the board for your time tonight. I know it's been a long night. Just as two comments really is one is, you know, I do think just in listening to all the public comment tonight, it does seem that there is a bit of a rush to push this through. And that's not completely clear to me, not sort of sitting on these meetings day in, day out. So that's just something that sort of just strikes me as a sort of more casual observer of a township business. Diane, I think, did a great job of diligent overview and providing, you know, job descriptions and roles and responsibilities. And maybe this is a little bit in the weeds, but the previous public comment by Michelle, I believe it was, she kind of hit a few things that sort of just struck my interest in terms of, you know, roles and responsibilities. And perhaps this is, like I said, getting in the weeds and not warranted tonight, but it would be interesting for me to understand from her perspective as well, you know, who is responsible in this new organization restructuring for code enforcement and conditional land use oversight, right? So lots of stuff going on in that space. And Michelle spoke a little bit to the development and which direction we're going in. So with that, I'm just going to leave that on the table. And if you choose to acknowledge it, great. If not, hopefully we'll have the opportunity to discuss that in the very near future. Thank you.
Jeff Jackson, followed by Melanie. Jeff?
Thank you, Jessica. Jeff Jackson, 4910 Dexter Ann Arbor Road. I will be brief as well, but I overheard somebody saying that they were so pleased that there was a lot of citizen involvement on this issue. And I'd just like to say there's a reason for that. And one of the reasons is the experience with a previous manager. With all due respect to the incoming members of the Board of Trustees, I'm not sure you understand how much bad feeling was generated by the actions of that manager on some particular issues. I suppose I should thank him because he turned me into an activist, and that's why I'm on this meeting tonight, listening to all of this. And it wasn't just his own incompetence. He was negligent, and he flat out lied to the residents. He lied to me, and he lied to the Board of Trustees. When I pointed this out, I was met with stony silence. There were certain members of the previous administration that protected him and enabled him. And we as residents are afraid that the same thing is going to be happening if you give that manager too much power and not enough oversight, and you don't hold him or her to account. We are very concerned about this. We don't like what was happening with the previous managerial model. So I think you need to understand, again, with due respect, this is the legacy you guys inherited. And I wish that a few of you had been more in tune with the last few meetings of the previous administration, all the people who spoke up and were unhappy with the bad taste they left in our mouths on a couple of particular issues and the way they simply enabled the previous manager to behave badly. So I am not saying I am against any particular model that's been presented tonight, but I do have to say, please understand where we as residents are coming from and what our concerns are. And we'd really like to have some assurance that this time it's going to be different. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Jeff. Next up is Michelle, followed by Melanie, followed by Janet and Paul. Melanie? Melanie, I'm going to come back.
If this is the same Melanie, then Melanie spoke on this subject earlier.
Yeah, I don't know if it is, Will. That's I don't know. Melanie, I'm going to come back to you. You're still on mute. Next up is Janet and Paul, followed by Bill Stein. Janet and Paul.
This is Janet, and Paul and I are at 1410 South Z Road, and we've been listening intently on this subject. And I also would like to say, I'm probably going to repeat some of what others have said, and I'm sorry, but I think it's important that we reiterate that. But I just wanted to acknowledge that I know what I am saying. I also feel that this is a subject that should have been right at the beginning. I have attended many Ann Arbor council meetings, and it seems like those things that are extremely important to your constituency, it's always put at the end or towards the end, and people get tired and people leave, and consequently the public is not heard from. So having said that, looking at both models, I have some real concerns about the top-down model. This one administrator, and having lived here for over 20 years, and also experiencing what happened with previous administrators and how we, the public, have felt that we were burnt and not listened to and not respected by. There is a real concern that the model that you are putting forth is too top heavy, that there is too much concentrated responsibility in one person, and that one person, in order to do that position and do it well, has to be extremely knowledgeable about every single aspect of that position. Somebody just ahead of me said something about your relinquishing and enabling or the previous administrators or previous managers being enabled by the board. I see that as a real fear. And frankly, I'm seeing that happening in front of me right now, that the decisions that you are about to make in terms of giving up the responsibility that each one of you have been elected to do, you are going to enable a one person to just simply take over. My second comment and fear is
30 seconds.
Okay, none of the jobs have been defined, and that you're in the process of saying this is the way in which you want to go, but you have no real idea of what this administrator is going to be doing and the qualifications that are going to be required for that person. So from me, I think that the one administrator model is not the model that is going to best suit those of us that live in Scio Township.
Thank you. Next up is Bill Stein. Still you, Pat?
Yes, it's still
Hello,
me.
Pat.
Hi, Pat Stein, 1413 South Sea Road. I've been my husband and I have been residents for 45 years at Scio, and it's a great place to live. and you've heard me talk of this before, but you're going to hear it again. The previous board consisted of a manager. Well, he actually wasn't on the board, but you know, it took us 3 years. 3 years to get an ordinance passed regarding the engine brakes and they're used on Z Road past our house. 3 years. And it took 3 years because you had a manager. And that manager basically kept all the concerns we voiced to himself. That was never brought to the board until we actually threatened to come to the board and bring it up as an issue ourselves. And then we got some cooperation. But that cooperation really only it still took 9 to 12 months to still get it resolved. But what I don't understand is you all knew what the positions were when you ran for these offices. You all knew what was expected of you. You get in the position and now it's just getting so jumbled. It feels like it's not that complicated. You know what's expected of you, do what's expected of you. If you feel that a manager is needed, why would you want to fall into the same cracks as the last one? He had all this power, and then he, I'm so sorry. He really was a nice man. I'm sorry for his health issues, but look what happened. So you want to bring someone else in, you want to really load them up with all these responsibilities, and then what's going to happen? I mean, really, has anybody really thought that far? What is the backup plan? Anyway, so good luck. I'm disappointed with the way things are going, and I'm certainly disappointed in the length of this meeting, but wish you all a good night and the best. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Pat. Next hands, Paula G.
Yes, I've watched for since Mr. Tickle actually been involved with the township, and I haven't seen any of the managers, and this goes back to Daryl Fetcho, and I'll reiterate something I said before. When it was hatched to take people so they could develop the Jackson Road, which I have no problem with the Jackson business area, as long as there are lights, which we were told, not only the one on Jackson, but the one on Zeeb, which have taken multiple injuries and deaths, that we were just going to take neighborhoods off so that we could continue to allocate that capacity for businesses. Now, I did not see in any way how this improved anything for the different neighborhoods. And I spent multiple hours. I was blocked until some people, so I could at least sit on these water boards. We still have a water issue. I mean, Ann Arbor is currently being sued for misuse of their water funds. I have only seen the last, and I all due respect, Mr. Hathaway, I don't know you that well, but reading your job description, it's so top heavy what you get to decide with this manager. And I have found managers, yes, people. And there's been a couple long-term board managers that just pass motions. I don't know if you guys meet together and say, hey, let's all of us vote on this thing, and then just cram it through. And the lack of our newsletter was somewhat of an improvement, but we need all of these meetings. People are very busy. We now have COVID. We're going to be living with COVID for a very long time. So for the sake of transparency, we need all of these different meetings. And then I also have concern about these different committees. Many people have full-time jobs, trying to single parent or whatever they're trying to do to try to keep tabs on what people are doing. And I don't think you realize, many of you on the board, how much ire there is. And even talks of recall of different people on this board. And all the time, through all the many horrible issues that we've had to deal with, and there seems to be a big leaning towards developers, what developers want, and then the SADs, we have to pay for the SADs, whether it's water stations, and I like the other model because I think there will be checks and balances, discussions where we don't have planning commissions, certain people just ramming through their idea. Only 6% of the people usually even come and vote in these township things. Sometimes they're held in August. I felt the last supervisory letter about SADs was deceptive. And people are very concerned about the rural nature and the things that we can, and I know that time is up, and we don't want another, I look at it as we've become a big box sprawl, and it's sprawling off of Jackson. And I appreciate it, and I'm very much against this motion being pushed through so quickly tonight. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Paula. Any other hands? Still got 40 people in attendance. Thank you for hanging with us.
So are there more comments from members of the Board of Trustees at this point?
2 more members of the public will.
Oh, there's more.
Rob Pattinson, followed by Alice Owings. Rob?
I was advised by people much smarter than me tonight not to speak during the public comments. I do not understand the rush. This feels like a dirty trick that, unfortunately, I have to be direct to you, Will, but it feels like I now understand why you absolutely refused to make it a discussion only issue last week or last board meeting and this one, because you knew that you could sneak this through tonight. And I hope you understand how livid, if people aren't angry or upset or uncomfortable, people are livid. And you have a lot of people here now who are at these board meetings because we are so afraid of what you're trying to do. And Will, your highest purpose here is to build consensus. And the way things have been going the last few months, that does not feel like what you're doing. And I'm really disappointed in the rest of the board members for following along so easily. You all have a responsibility to us residents to make sure that what we're doing is safe and right. And we have a failed model with the manager. And so there's our proof that the manager model in this township has not worked. Why would we do the same thing all over again? This does not make sense. And I am really disappointed that you're trying to force this through tonight at 10:58. This does not make sense. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up is Alice Owings. Alice.
Thank you. So Rob is my neighbor, and Rob and I are dear friends. But Rob, I first spoke on March 9th at the Board of Trustees meeting, and I said I supported a manager, and I supported a nonpartisan person who was responsive to the public, who would give us continuity and institutional memory that would last longer than these elected politicians that we have. And I responded before to a series of questions about the prior problems that Trustee Knoll brought up. And I said, look, it's going to be really incumbent upon you as trustees to make sure that whatever model works. So, you know, that remains the same. I also am disappointed that the clerk is surprised by things in the administrator model, given that, you know, I've been out there with my sad little blue charts since April 4th. So again, this, oh, it's such a rush, all these sorts of things. I'm sorry, my financial checks and balances, where we have a treasurer who manages the revenues, a clerk who manages the payables, and a supervisor who should be responsible for budget, audit, and reporting functions, which therefore requires a sharing of supervision of the financial staff. I mean, you guys say you want public comment, but then you feel free to ignore us. And the rest of the public listening here tonight, you know, you say there's no silent majority. Well, I'm out here, I've been talking, and I keep getting shouted down. The silent majority spoke when they elected these people in November. And really, you know, everyone's saying, well, Will Hathaway's gone crazy and he wants to be full-time. Jack Knowles had a supplement added to his salary in recognition that without a manager, there was the need to further compensate him. And also, I think, you know, Roy starting off this meeting with 33 years at Washington County Road and really highlighting for us the growth in the township really has helped, I think, to solidify in my mind the need for both a full-time supervisor and a manager. And that was not something that I went into this having an open mind towards. So I really just, you know, I like to be able to disagree with people without being disagreeable, but this has really descended into a, let's get the, you know, the torches and pitchforks and get on social media and send group emails, and we're going to talk down the people and, you know, make allegations about a silent majority. Well, you know, I'm here, I'm talking, I'm not silent, and I support, you know, call it what you will, administrator, manager, you know, all these sorts of things. I especially support checks and balances for our financial staff and really good management, good leadership, reasonable adults in charge of our staff. Thank you.
Thanks, Alice. Next up is Jonathan Greenberg. Jonathan?
Yeah, so
Jonathan, you've already spoken on this topic.
that wasn't the topic I was going to speak on, Will, and I also got cut off a couple of times last time I spoke. I was going to speak to the issue of you wanting to ensure that residents are only heard once, and that if they go over their time limit, you cut them off. This is really clearly a power move on your part. I think other folks here have called it out. I urge caution to go slowly earlier in the evening. That was the only comment I made. The comment I'm making now is that this is a disgusting power grab. I'm livid as well. There's a bunch of people here. And for every one person who echoed the comments of the individual Alice before me, who would like to bring up the issue of the silent majority, which was used to cram this garbage debacle down our throats. And folks like our treasurer, who makes nasty comments and faces throughout the meetings, and the other folks here who hand wring and make cracks about how hard this is. It's a meeting. People are talking. This isn't hard. This is your job. This is what you were elected for. And the fact that you can go forward with this tonight and pretend that this isn't anything other than it really is, just disgusting. I'm livid as well.
Thank you, Jonathan. Any other hands? I see no other Zoom hands.
All right, well, there are a couple of things that I would like to say before we call this question. There's a lot of comments about how this feels rushed to people. and how, we did this at the end of a long meeting on purpose. And I just want to be, I want to respond to both of those things. In the overview, there's a chronology of how long the township has been dealing with this issue. This particular Board of Trustees has been dealing with this issue in special meetings, in work sessions, in a committee that was formed to work on this. It's met pretty much every week for 9 weeks. We did a survey back in January where we got input from people. We've had multiple discussions of this topic, many of them public, many of them including public comments from people, many of the public comments from people who have commented tonight. To say that this is a rushed process is to ignore the process that we've been going through since back in December. So let's keep in mind just how long a process this is and how much discussion and how much public input there has been on this issue. And then in terms of this meeting, it was the motion at the last meeting that put this discussion into a regular board meeting. That's what people were clamoring for. Many of the people who spoke this evening said it would be wrong to put this into a special meeting. And now, because basically we did what people asked and we put this into a regular Board of Trustees meeting and it went long, people are claiming that somehow that was a sneaky move. This is what people asked for. This is what people wanted. I think actually it makes more sense to put this topic into a special meeting, to focus attention on it, to let people know that's the topic that it will be dealt with at that meeting, and then they can plan accordingly if they care about that topic. And, if we had put, the Dexter Ann Arbor run at the end of the meeting, would that have been fair to the Dexter Ann Arbor run to make them wait while we went through all of the discussion of this topic? I don't think so. I think that actually made sense to structure the agenda as we did. At this point, I would like to call the question on the motion and have a vote, a roll call vote.
All right, on Donna's motion by Palmer, support by Vogel. Hathaway?
Yes.
Palmer?
Yes.
Flintoff? No. Corto?
Yes.
Jerome? I'm sorry, Alec, what did you say?
Yes.
Okay, thank you, Alec. Noel?
No.
Vogel?
Yes.
Motion passes 5-2.
Okay, the next item is item J7. And given the late hour, I don't want to keep people here for yet another issue. So I would suggest that we postpone, that we table this particular agenda item until another meeting.
Is that a motion to table?
Yeah, motion to table. Is there support?
Support.
Well, I saw Donna's hand first. So I guess it's a motion by me and support by Palmer.
Did you want to ask for discussion or public comment?
I guess we can have discussion of the motion to table. Are there any comments?
The lawyer will jump in and tell you that there's no discussion of a tabling motion.
Oh, good. Thank you, Jim. You saved us from ourselves.
All right, then let's call a roll.
Hathaway?
Yes.
Palmer?
Yes.
Flintoff? Yes. Corto?
Yes.
Jerome?
Yes, and thank you, Jim.
Noel?
Yes.
Vogel?
Yes.
Motion passes 7-0.
That brings us to final public comment. And this is a time for members of the public to speak for up to 3 minutes on any matter under the purview of the Board of Trustees.
Please raise your Zoom hand. We're going to start off with Pam Boyd, followed by Harvey Summers. Pam.
Hi. Mr. Hathaway, I want to point out one quick thing, and then I've got my other comment. In the newsletters this year, I don't see anything having to do with this issue before the board of either of the models. I've not weighed in because to me tonight I was learning, but I do want to point out that your main communication with the citizens of this township is through that community report. And I scanned it and maybe I'm missing something, but so I will leave that comment then. And then my next final one short, again, I'm Pam Boyd, 517 Linden Lane. I'd like, in all due respect, respond to Trustee Vogel's comment on calling Honey Creek a concept. But really, this is to the entire board. Please listen. When you show the concept on a map in the latest newsletter, just like you called Zeeb Road map a concept at the last board meeting, you are likely, as you have heard, going to get pushback. It's a natural reaction. Please practice transparency, invite us to hear your ideas and to participate in its design. These are our homes that will be impacted by your concepts. Please don't forget to engage us in those conversations. Thank you. Have a good evening.
Thanks very much, Pam. Next up is Harvey Summers.
And I'm still at 2129 Autumn Hill Drive. And I was mentioning hours ago at the beginning of the meeting that the chat was disabled. And I mentioned that because it was said that we would use the chat to bring up logistical problems. So I want to mention to the Board of Trustees that on the township website, the link on contact the Board of Trustees doesn't work. When I sent in my comments to be included in the record this afternoon, and I clicked on contact the board, I got a blank Google search screen. It's not a link to your email addresses. So I'd just like to say logistically, it'd be nice if we could get that fixed on the website. Thank you.
Thank you, Harvey. I'll try it 3 more times. Okay. Any other hands? No Zoom hands.
In that case, we are at the end of our agenda. Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Moved by Jerome, seconded by Corto. Please call the roll.
Hathaway?
Yes.
Palmer?
Yes.
Flintoff? Yes. Corto?
Yes.
Jerome?
Yes.
Noel?
Yes.
Vogel?
Yes.
Motion passes 7-0. Meeting adjourned at 11:11. Thank you, everybody.